Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto found out about the Uzumaki clan and was a prodigy. A small twist of fate made him aware of his heritage, unsealing the legacies his parents left behind. Graduating from the academy at age 7, he's well on his way. He found a kindred spirit in Uchiha Itachi, and his cousin Shisui's along for the ride. They're on the path to unsealing the legacy left by their ancestors, both the dark and the light. Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 22, 22nd Legacy. So, this is the guy that spooked Naruto badly. Shisui couldn't blame Naruto, the guy did look a bit spooky. No wonder the Jinchuriki was so restless. Why now? Itachi trembled slightly. He couldn't believe he almost forgot, but this man, he was the one who killed his first teammate. Judging from Naruto's reaction, it was clear that this was also the same man behind the night of the tragedy 9 years ago. Naruto cursed in his mind, damn. Damn. Damn it. He never left after all. After the memory transfer, he held a faint hope that this guy just left. But it seems that it won't be so easy, obviously. We have to flee. No need for questions. Usually Kurama was not one to suggest running away, but he also knew that this is a battle they can't win. Also, because his paranoid Jinchuriki had asked about this scenario, and called him an idiot if he thought going on a rampage was a solution. For all he cared, he could have killed you when you had your guard down, or severely injured you who has the slowest reaction time. So most likely. How is it reassuring to know that he didn't kill me the first time, so he won't try to do that the next? Naruto protested, and he decided to test his luck in Kurama's theory. He loosened the seal on his Satori, lamenting about how the headache would kill him afterwards, but he would rather stay alive to feel the pain later. Uchiha Madara. He started cautiously. The one-eyed Uchiha inclined his head slightly. What a strange view, a team consisting of Uzumaki and Uchiha. Also, strangely nostalgic, it's like seeing that idealistic fool Hashirama and I again. Naruto shuddered, his deep voice matched his ghost-like aura, it was haunting. He frowned when he felt no spike of emotion from the Uchiha, while the Satori could only see through thoughts on the surface. Madara shouldn't feel this, indifferent where his rival was concerned. Or perhaps Madara's mental barrier was so strong that Satori didn't get anything from him. Madara. Shisui snarled, why did you appear before us now? Did you come for Naruto? His lone eye glanced at Naruto, and the Uchiha cousins quickly stepped forward as if to shield Naruto from his eye. Tempting, but the Kyuubi belongs to me, so it doesn't really matter when I take back what's rightfully mine. Naruto snapped, Kurama is not yours. He is not an object. Madara snorted, you named the Kyuubi? What a surprise, you're fully aware and in contact with that beast, and even going as far as naming it like it's your pet. How laughable. Oi Naruto, don't argue with the bastard about Bijuu's rights. Seriously, I thought you're a firm believer of not picking a fight you can't win and fight for another day. He was a little touched that Naruto would stupidly argue for him against Madara, maybe Madara, but for their sakes, the smarter option was to get the hell out of there with his Uchiha friends. Naruto growled, he had to admit Kurama was right, convincing the Uchiha otherwise was a lost cause. If you're not here for me, then why have you killed our target? A whim, I felt like it. A lie. Obviously. Kurama scoffed imperiously. Itachi frowned, Naruto didn't seem to buy Madara's excuse. He didn't believe Mukai was killed because Madara felt like it either, but he couldn't think of any logical reason of how the death of one of Kiri's spies could benefit Madara in any way. Mukai was dead, and in this situation, his death didn't matter at all. What mattered was, Madara or not had appeared, and he was a dangerous threat to them. I am curious. He said suddenly, and it took a while for them to compute the masked man was still answering their query. I would have left you kids alone after I got rid of these men. So, staying to talk with them was a whim while killing Mukai was a necessity, they concluded. Is that so, honorable ancestor? Shisui spat sarcastically. Naruto hissed, Shisui. Don't provoke him. It's so. The oldest Uchiha present indulged his younger clansmen, I have been watching, I always do, since the day our clan exiled me. Now, Naruto was very confused, because he still couldn't feel any significant emotions from this man. He couldn't even tell if this man felt anything at all even when talking about how his clan abandoned him. It's like, he is talking about someone else's life. He couldn't help but think, is he really Uchiha Madara? Funny, now I am the one thinking, who cares if he is Madara or not? Kurama grunted. He seems interested in talking to us, so we let him, and trying to escape from him recklessly would be suicidal. And he was not going to bet on fighting this man head-on with his team. Naruto knew it was likely they had to, unless this man had a whim to leave them be after he was finished with his story. You three have been pretty busy wandering all over the continent to search for our legacy. What are you guys looking for? Shisui was about to retort, but Naruto covered his mouth before he could. We're interested in our clan's legacy, of course, especially since we found a number of discrepancies in the recorded history. Impressive, child. You're not so naive to let Konoha spoon-feed you their foolish ideology. He sounded genuinely impressed. But you have not answered my question. The legacy of our clans can be anything. At their narrowed eyes he added, so how about a deal? You tell me what you're looking for and I will tell you about it. Naruto, Itachi, and Shisui clamped their mouths shut, thinking. Suspicious. Is this a trick to make us let our guard down? What the heck is this meta-ancestor of ours up to? He can't be serious offering us the answer just because we asked him. The blonde swallowed and tested their luck. I want to know why the Daime was wary of the Uchiha clan to the point he isolated the Uchiha to one place. The Uchiha finished. It's pretty simple really. Is he really answering us? Naruto thought in disbelief. It's because Tobirama never trusted the Uchiha clan. Shisui snarled, he trusted my father, Uchiha Kagami. Perhaps he did trust your father, Uchiha Shisui, but he never trusted the Uchiha clan as a whole. After all, we're a cursed clan. A chill ran down his spine at the word cursed, as for the first time since the masked man's second appearance, Naruto felt a strong emotion from the man. It was sadness, regret, anger and hate, so much hate he almost choked on it. Itachi narrowed his eyes, what do you mean cursed? He inclined his neck, lone red eye narrowed, we Uchiha, are people that are greatly devoted to love and friendship, though we tend to conceal and suppress such emotions. Contrary to what people believe, power comes after. We don't follow Indra, our ancestor at all. Shisui was stunned. While he knew his clan was not full of heartless bastards, it was hard to compute that apparently, they were all romantics at heart and tend to hide their affectionate nature. He could relate that to Itachi and to an extent his uncle, but not to his more stuck-up clansmen like Tekka or Inabi. And? Which part of that is a curse? Naruto asked. Irony of valuing the Senju's ancestors' choice aside. The Uchiha snorted, the curse starts when we lose the people most important to us. Naruto was surprised at the strong emotion that hit him all of a sudden to the point he began to sway on his feet. When we lose our loved ones, our love can instantaneously turn into hatred, and we lose sight of everything else. No matter how deep our love, our hatred, and despair will run deeper. Naruto stared wide-eyed at the Uchiha before him, as if it was the first time he saw the man. Deep darkness, sadness and anger so deep that I feel suffocated. And that emotion is what awakens our Sharingan. The mirror that reflects our feelings for our loved ones. That explained the mystery of the Sharingan's awakening, but Naruto was more concerned of his own condition. He tried to focus his chakra to close his seal on the Satori, but for some reason, it couldn't block the intense emotions coming from Madara. Oi, Naruto. I feel sick. He coughed, his head throbbing painfully. Itachi grasped Naruto's shoulder, wondering what came over the Uzumaki. He looks sick, what's wrong with Naruto? Shisui snarled, oh yeah? I still don't see the cursed part. The older Uchiha let out an amused chuckle, you can't see it yet, can you? Uchiha Shisui. Uchiha Itachi, of course you don't, after all, you don't have the heavenly eyes that see the truth of all of creation without obstruction yet. Suddenly it dawned on Itachi and Shisui what the other Uchiha was implying. He was talking about the legendary next step in the evolution of their dojutsu. The main Jikyo Sharingan. I suppose I should help my descendants develop their eyes. Then you can see the truth and experience our curse yourself. He cocked his eyes slightly. Now the question is, what does it take for us to awaken our main Jikyo Sharinan? How much pain does it take for us to achieve that power? Itachi's eyes narrowed, before his Sharinan went wide in shock. It didn't take a genius to figure out that the next step of their dojutsu requires an even stronger emotion, and to experience that. No. He reacted, drawing Tenro and attempting to cut Madara in two. Shisui followed closely with Shivien, but their blades went through the black-clad shinobi. With growing horror, the Uchiha cousins couldn't react fast enough when Madara grabbed Naruto by his neck and slammed the Jinchuriki against a tree with a sickening crack, Hokuto noisily falling to the ground. Gah! Naruto choked out. Let him go, Madara. Shisui growled, but neither he nor Itachi dared to make a move when Naruto was still in Madara's grasp. This is the worst possible situation I could have gotten myself into. He thought to himself. Naruto, you idiot. The Uchiha hummed, Namikaze's Satori bloodline hum. That made them pause. No wonder you look unwell, boy, an Uchiha's emotion is too much for you. How ironic for a Senju descendant to fall victim to their own bloodline limit. Go to hell. He hissed, provoking the Uchiha was unwise, but he was too irritated to think clearly. Ak. With his windpipe pressed, Naruto couldn't breathe. Curious, how curious, I don't know much about the Satori. After all, the Namikaze is an almost extinct clan, a shame to kill you but dash. Kongo Fusa materialized and the Uchiha was forced to let Naruto go before the chain ripped him to pieces. He dodged my Kongo Fusa instead of letting it pass through him? Why? Naruto. Itachi and Shisui shunshined to his side in an instant. Go, he is after you. What? I am not leaving you guys with him. Naruto snarled. That madman wants to kill you to get us to awaken the main Jikyo Sharinan. Shisui snarled back, go. Listen to us. He is not going to kill us. You're the only one in danger here, Naruto. Itachi hissed. But Naruto stopped, whirling around and threw a punch to his side. Itachi's and Shisui's eyes widened when they saw Madara was behind them in a flash and he caught Naruto's fist in his grasp. Allow me to help you to choose. Whoosh. Then the world started to spin and Naruto disappeared from their eyes. Itachi eyed his outstretched hand in shock, where all his hand reached was air. His friend was gone. Tenro was drawn in a flash and he swung the blade over the older Uchiha. The blade phased through and Madara sidestepped them with ease when Shisui followed, attacking with his Shivien. Where did you take Naruto? Return him to us. Shisui demanded. Madara chuckled, return him? A shame that I can't return him, he is gone. We don't believe you. Itachi hissed. You want the Biju the Yondaime sealed in Naruto. You want him alive. The Uchiha air launched his blade of fire, Jien, Fire Snake. The masked shinobi didn't move as he let Itachi's serpent of fire harmlessly go through his body. It's pointless, you will not be able to touch me. Not without the same eyes as mine. Shisui growled, don't take us for a fool. Bastard. He howled, raising his blade. Kaubano Akazuchi, grain of lightning. Torrents of lightning shot up to the sky before it fell down upon the older Uchiha, who deftly dodged the rain of lightning with ease. He disappeared and the lightning hit empty ground before it reappeared a few meters away from his original spot. Had enough, boys. Itachi narrowed his eyes. Shisui, he dodged your lightning but not my fire, why was that? Shisui nodded, he noticed that as well. Yeah, he even teleported, what's the difference between our attacks? He can't be weak to lightning, could he? Then he tested his theory, unleashing another torrent of lightning that sped up like a bullet towards the masked man. This time he didn't dodge, and let the lightning bolt pass through. The Uchiha cousin concluded the element of their attack was not the problem, but the form and range of it was the likeliest factor. But why would those matter? Clank. Their blade met his scythe, and Shisui cursed under his breath. Strong. If my blade wasn't the Muramasa sword, he would have cut through me. Itachi panted slightly, he was getting tired as this was already his second fight, not to mention at Mukai's insistence, they had not rested at all on the way to Kawa no Kuni. Although this fight was going pretty well considering who they were up against. Still, he knew his clan had a flair for drama, but he was sure that considering his general opinion on Madara, the man's taste for techniques with a large scale of destruction was not an exaggeration. However, this man, while powerful and undoubtedly a Kage-class shinobi, didn't fight as flashily as Madara did. While he had an upper hand in this battle, the man was mostly on the defensive instead of on the offensive. Madara was never ever described as a defense-oriented fighter, but a godlike entity who summons calamity-scaled destruction like the Kyuubi no Yuko upon his enemies. So, what's with this efficient, swift, and defensive fighting style? He couldn't even call this Madara a shadow of his former self. It was like he was a completely different shinobi from what was told in historical records. Itachi didn't think he could subscribe the change of fighting style to age. Age-wise, if this man was over 100 years old, he shouldn't be standing now, let alone fight with a completely different style. Age gives edge and refinement to a fighting style, not a 180-degree turn. Still, he didn't put it past Madara to change his eyes with another Uchiha that was buried by war and fashion a new fighting style to suit the eyes. This is really strange. I wish I could talk to Kurama. Or better, ask Naruto to ask Kurama to confirm the man's identity. For now, however, Itachi let himself open slightly so his opponent's fist could connect to his side, while Shisui attacked. His eyes narrowed when Shisui's blade and Madara's fist didn't connect. The masked man simply ran through them like a ghost. Shisui smirked at him, panting. "You saw that, Itachi?" He nodded. It seems that he can't attack and defend at the same time with the technique that allows him to be intangible, so we have to attack him simultaneously. This was not an enemy they could face alone. Still, it was going to be hard to fight that way without Naruto. Neither he nor Shisui was good at relentless offensive moves. They neither had the chakra nor stamina to pull it off. "Wonderful, you figured out something about me, I suppose." He didn't sound worried, "but it seems you're running out of gas. A pity really that our clan was never a stamina powerhouse like the Uzumaki and Senju. Then again, we did get our fair share of Rakuto Senin's legacy." "Funny how you of all people bring that up." Shisui muttered sarcastically, "As an Uchiha, you should also know that we're all as stubborn as a mule underneath our stoic mask, and we will stop at nothing until you give Naruto back to us." Exactly what he said. "You're wrong if you think we will give up, not until we get him back," Itachi vowed. The masked Uchiha became very still, and even though he seemed wide open for some reason, the Uchiha cousins felt more threatened by this suffocating silence. "I see." His voice became deeper, ominously, that made them shudder with dread. "So, he is your son Ne. Uzumaki Naruto is a very precious existence for you too, I can see it, the same love and devotion I once had for my brother and Hashirama." Shisui swallowed, "And just now I doubted if he really is Madara, but even though I am not Naruto, I can tell that." Whether or not he was telling us the truth, this emotion, in his oppressing chakra, is real. This despair and grief were a requirement that awoke their legendary bloodline limit, and Madara was the result. Itachi and Shisui learned that as shinobi of Konoha, their power was to protect their loved ones. So, when Madara told them their power was gained through the loss of their loved one, it was right for him to call their clan cursed. "I don't want that power." For once, in the privacy of their minds, Itachi felt like a child. "I don't want to be like this man before me, no power is worth the pain." The man smirked, even with his mask-covered face, his body language seemed to express a smirk. "You have not given up yet on your Jinchuriki friend, you still have hope that he is alive, he will be back and you will be a team once again." Shisui and Itachi narrowed their eyes. "He stopped fighting us, and it seems like he is more interested in taunting us. Listening to a manipulative bastard like Madara is not a good idea. Why is he talking like he knows how it feels to be separated from a teammate, anyways? The world is not that kind to us, not to us Uchiha, or to any shinobi." He finished. Shisui snarled, "What the heck are you talking about?" "Oh, I am sure you understand, after all, this is not the first time you've lost your teammate, right?" Itachi. Shisui. As one the two Uchiha froze. "How do you dash?" Shisui began. "You're the one who killed Tenma." Itachi hissed. He shook his head and sighed, although, you still don't understand, but of course, compared to Uzumaki Naruto, your deceased teammates weren't as important. You feel nothing from their death. How dare you accuse us for feeling nothing? Shisui had to admit he didn't like his previous teammates that much, but it would be a lie to say he didn't feel anything. The man laughed. Of course you wouldn't know the difference, the feeling that the world has ended when your precious friend slips away from your grasp and then, nothing dash. Wham! As something yellow flashed in the corner of their eyes, and followed by the sound of something heavy hitting the ground interrupted their argument, two pairs and one lone Sharingan turned to the source of the noise. Two pairs of red eyes widened in shock when they spotted the battered body of a familiar shinobi. Naruto. Itachi mouthed in disbelief. There was so much blood and his body looked broken, he didn't move and was very still. Lone Sharingan eye narrowed at the body of the Jinchuriki and then turned towards the two Uchiha who were looking with growing despair. What a familiar sight, it was like looking into a mirror. And so, the light of the sun is snuffed out and you will be drowned in despair, like I said. Itachi, Shisui, the world is cruel. Itachi and Shisui couldn't hear the smug voice of the masked Uchiha, eyes glued to the broken body of their friend, they could feel their hearts shattering to pieces. Their eyes burned as if they were on fire and the tomo spun, transforming into pitch-black pinwheels. The color of despair dyed their Sharingan, black and red rippled like a kaleidoscope. How dare you? He smirked when he saw three black tomo swimming in the red eyes of Uchiha air start to morph, melding together, and he could tell so did Shisui's Sharingan. They were reaching out for that dark power all those with Uchiha blood innately sought. Then, faster than he could react, a familiar golden chain shot up from the ground, whipping around his leg before traveling up to wrap around his neck. He was almost choked before his power saved him from the close call, teleporting him away from his original spot. Naruto! Itachi and Shisui cried. The Uzumaki was on his knees, panting as he retracted his chakra chain back. Don't decide I am dead, bastard. I just had a little accident on my way here. But by all rights, if not for who he was, he would be dead by now. Itachi and Shisui were by his side in a flash, their Sharingan eyes back to their normal shape. You're alive. Naruto shot them an annoyed glare and, before they could react, he flicked them both on the forehead. Of course I am, idiots. I can't believe you ate up the bluff he fed you. I may be low on chakra and look as good as dead, but I am sure as hell not dead. Shisui and Itachi paused and realized Naruto was right, he was almost out of chakra but he still had chakra unlike a dead body. They believed he was still alive but they had their doubt, and their traitorous relative didn't help with how convincing he sounded. Then his body fell out of nowhere in such a state. Besides, I promised you both a lot of things. Naruto told them, I promised you I will help you to make our village and clan to become one. I will make Itachi our Hokage. I promised we will have true peace. They were stunned. I am not going to die before I fulfill those promises. He scoffed, blue eyes glinting mischievously. And I don't break my promise. A smile slowly formed on their lips, this is our Naruto, all right. Hokage, you believe, Itachi, an Uchiha could become a Hokage. It took a while for Naruto to compute that maybe Madara was the one who asked him. He couldn't help but feel offended on Itachi's behalf. Yeah, I do. Do you have a problem? You have a better chance to be a Hokage than he does, after all you're from the Senju line. The man chuckled, surely you're not so naive to think that the Hokage's selection is purely on credential alone. What the heck? Why did he even bother to ask a such thing? Naruto scowled, of course I know. I haven't seen the next candidate names but I am sure aside from remaining loyal Sunin, the name next to theirs is undoubtedly Hatake Kakashi. He said blithely. Your name must be up on the list too, don't you think so? Uzumaki. He recalled how Sandaime expertly and subtly made him believe being a Hokage was a noble dream. Of course he knew what Sandaime wanted from him. Sandaime liked Itachi but between him and Itachi, Naruto knew who he was going to choose. So, like he cared who had a better chance to make it to that seat. Long-standing tradition of nepotism be damned. I have faith that Itachi will make it. He will be our Hokage one day. So do I. Shisui added, his eyes never leaving the stray Uchiha. Itachi stayed quiet. While he was touched by their support, he was at a loss as to why his chances of becoming a Hokage suddenly became a matter of importance to Madara of all people. Maybe it was because of his rivalry with Hashirama, but Itachi wondered why this man suddenly lost all his intent to fight. At some point his weapon was nowhere in sight and his stance relaxed, as if he never intended to attack them. Faith, huh? The man mused. How alike, you and her. Huh? A vortex started to form from his right eye as his body was being sucked in a spiraling Foshian. Interesting. Uzumaki Naruto, very interesting. The red eye turned to the two Uchiha, as for you two, don't think it's over yet. Our curse is always with us, don't think you can escape it. You're not the one who decides that. Itachi vowed. We will overcome it. A scoff was heard from the remaining body, futile struggle, but let's see where it takes you. Uchiha Itachi. Shisui. And then he was gone. Few hours later. I wish we have B blood type. Shisui drawled on as he helped Naruto to wipe the blood. The Uzumaki wanted to roll his eyes, but it would make his head ache worse. Are you dumb? Even if you do, it's not like we have tools to transfer blood. He had taken pills for his blood loss, but it was a slow process of recovery and he felt lightheaded, especially as the adrenaline was steadily dropping since the threat was gone. I thought you do, or perhaps you have invented a seal to transfer blood. Shisui told him honestly. Naruto wondered if Shisui thought he used seals to solve every problem coming his way. Most likely he did. I don't, and I am too tired to explain why it's not a good idea. HN. Shisui grunted. At any rate, what happened to you? What did he do to you? The Uchiha asked almost impatiently. His eyes shifted a little. Well, it's like this. Flashback. The world was spinning and the last he heard was Shisui and Itachi shouting his name, and suddenly the world became so dark. It was so quick when the world stopped spinning, but what he saw was endless darkness and then gravity pulled him down. Below was a hard solid ground that looked to be made of concrete. Damn, it would hurt. And it did hurt a lot when he landed on his back. He must had broken a couple of bones too. It's a lie if people say shinobi always land on their feet. Naruto spat to an endless void above. I am so fortunate I am an Uzumaki. He had a tougher body than most shinobi. Where are we? Kurama asked the important question, what the heck just happened to us? Naruto looked to the side as he slowly rose. There were countless randomly arranged and differently sized rectangular prisms in the dark and seemingly endless void. It eerily reminded Naruto of an abstract painting that a noble showed him proudly before, but that painting had colors while this place was monochrome. He rapped his knuckle on the grayish ground, frowning. It's not made of unknown material at least, but where the heck had that bastard transported him to? A ruin. Kurama guessed. Maybe, but he made his way to the edge of column he was standing on and looked down at bottomless void below. I don't think so. Arguably Uzushio and Ame are villages with best architectural techniques to build high buildings, but I don't think technology to build anything high enough to the point you can't see the bottom exists. So, this is another dimension. Another dimension? So we got trapped by some sort of space-time technique. I think so. This doesn't seem to be some place that belongs in our original dimension. The most glaring thing is, there is no natural chakra at all here. It's like the whole place is dead. Not to mention there was no light source here, and yet he could see just fine, so there must be some different rule of physics applied in this dimension. The place was fascinating and everything, but how the heck does he get back to Itachi and Shisui now? This is why I want to finish my very own transportation seal as soon as I can. He yelled in frustration. Why am I always stuck in a situation where I wish I have hydration? He moaned. You're still stuck at that one, huh? Seriously, Naruto, I can't believe what you get yourself into. Kurama shook his head exasperatedly. And it's not even my fault since, my poor living arrangement aside, back when Mito and Kushina were my vessels I don't recall they ever got into this much trouble. So I can confidently say, it's all on you. Kurama, shut up. Don't remind me of my pathetic luck and help me think. How to get out of here? Naruto snarled, in case it didn't dawn on you yet, this place is very likely a personal dimension. I barely can survive that bastard in real world, and as sure as hell don't want to in here. They're literally in that bastard's pocket. Kurama sighed loudly, if that's the case. Hydration won't help ya, you know. Huh. Didn't Hakure tell you that the theory behind hydration is like, two dots on a paper and Yondaime's technique basically bends the paper so the two separate dots connected. In short, hydration could teleport you anywhere as long as it's in the same dimension, and in this case Naruto was not even on the same paper as his desired location. Ah, that's right, which means to get out of here I need a technique that crosses dimensions and not just space. Then, in a sense he needs something superior to hydration? Wait, didn't that mean whatever technique the masked man used was superior to hydration? I don't even have any anchor to mark where my friends are now. He moaned before his hand reached down for his brush set, then realized something was missing. I dropped Hokuto when he attacked me. Didn't matter really since Hokuto was anchored to his chakra, so the sword, unless sealed, would put a fight if it was stolen. Maybe he could use Hokuto as some sort of anchor? Then he paled when he noticed something else was also missing from the unsealed sealing set he had. My chakra ink. The impact from just now broke it and there was barely any ink left. Of all times you forgot. I still have blood. I can make it work. If you say so, doesn't that make the seal more volatile or something? Other than for hacking an existing seal, yes. Because when hacking an active seal and modify it, blood was more effective to override the existing formula because blood was more chakra conductive than chakra ink. I don't have a lot of time, and where to start? He trailed off unsurely. His head went through countless of experiment he had done and he decided. Oh, no. Don't use that one. Didn't that formula when tested tear the dummy to shreds? Kurama had bare basic knowledge in sealing so he didn't get complicated seals Naruto experimented on lately, but he knew failed ones that would kill the user. Naruto bit his thumb and started to smear the blood on the surface. It did succeed to teleport it. And it's not using the same principle as hydration. It can cross dimensions, albeit, it will be a rough ride. You're going to bet on me and your natural Uzumaki's healing to get you back alive. That's idiotic. This seal you're drawing can't even transport inanimate objects intact. Kurama ranted on. This is idiotic. Suicidal. Baka. As he drew the seal on thankfully flat and large surface, Naruto agreed wholeheartedly with Kurama, he could die on the way back. Does waiting for that masked bastard to get us out sound better to you, Kurama? No, but... Then don't complain. I know this is not the smartest idea I ever have, but we don't have a lot of choices. I believe in you and myself that we will get out of here alive. Ugh, when you say it like that, I guess we can try. But I warn you, the one who will be in pain is you. I know, and that's why I said you can't complain. Of course I can. In this pathetic state I deserve to complain. I can only complain. Oh, damn it Kurama. Be quiet, I am drawing our lifeline here. End of flashback. And that's why I showed up bloody and low on chakra. Naruto finished his misadventure in an unknown dimension, with Kurama as his only company. Itachi and Shisui gave him an odd look and Naruto raised an eyebrow. I am really worried that Kurama of all, intelligent creatures, Shisui decided since it was odd to call Kurama a person, is the one trying to stop you from trying something stupid. Then what does that say for you who have me telling you not to do stupid things? He shot back. Touché. Shisui admitted. Whatever. I am just glad we survived him. Or he just lost interest in them, however, whatever he said about your curse. Shisui frowned. Kurama called us cursed too. In Kurama's case, it's a biased opinion, whether or not what he said is true you shouldn't let it get to you. Itachi and Shisui tensed slightly when Naruto grabbed their hands. Curse be damned, you're my friends. I wouldn't care. Itachi looked shaken. It seemed only after Naruto was safe what the masked man said was dawning on him. I don't want power. I don't want anything at the cost of your life. Shisui was also shaken, but Naruto could tell he was faring better than Itachi somehow. Both of them had lost their teammates before and it was still weighing heavily to their memory. That man. Itachi said. His voice was even but those Sharingan eyes were brimming with tears. He had killed Tenma-san, I was powerless to stop him, and just now, you were taken away and I still couldn't do anything about it. I know it was a close call and I almost got myself killed, but I am here now. Why had that bastard whisked him away like that? And now that the fight was over, the fact they lost and almost got killed was crashing down on both Itachi and Shisui. I am fine. He knew he was not convincing enough because he almost got himself killed trying to escape. Not to mention that he was injured, he was not sure whether he would be this lucky next time, if that bastard decided to transport him to that dimension, again. Itachi bit his lower lip, his Sharingan eyes were throbbing. Back then when Tenma was killed he learned what it meant to lose your bond, and he only realized that for all the unfriendliness Tenma showed, his teammate was precious to him. Itachi. Naruto was his friend, closest friend of his and Shisui's. No, they were brothers in everything but blood. The sadness when he lost Tenma was intense enough to shed his tears, making a crack in his stoic mask. If he had lost Naruto just now, Itachi didn't know how broken he would have become. It was just so easy to lose him, and Itachi felt powerless. For all achievement and power he had, hailed as the prodigy of the Uchiha clan, he was always struggling to accomplish what mattered the most. Shisui and Naruto were always by his side, helping and guiding him to accomplish what he couldn't do alone. He was fine not being able to do everything alone, yet why he couldn't protect Naruto? Flick. Naruto gave him an exasperated look. Itachi, you're always like this, you're not the only one frustrated with how things turned out. I am not doing so good myself, getting myself kidnapped like a damsel in distress. The Uzumaki looked ill at the parable he used for himself. You always get away on your own though. You guys helped me the first time around with Aizen, and in case you missed it, my attempt at saving myself more often than not is lesser than stellar. He was almost on his last leg by the end of it. Shisui nodded enthusiastically, just look at him now, he looks like a mummy. Indeed, Naruto had bandage all over his body, revealing only some part of his face. You're the one who got overboard with the bandage. Naruto pointed out. My injury is not that bad, you made me look like a half-dead patient. You got cuts all over from that reckless dimension hopping, you lost a lot of blood, and you got burns from Kurama's chakra. Shisui listed on. Of course you will looks like a mummy. Don't worry though, perhaps by the time we're back to Konoha tomorrow we can get rid of the one covering your face. Itachi assured him. Just like that, Itachi momentarily forgot all his worry as he and his friends made their way back to Konoha. Naruto complained about getting a piggy back home, and Shisui didn't let him do otherwise because somehow Naruto managed to sprain his ankle from one of his free falls. Kurama still refused to heal Naruto fully, claiming his vessel gave him enough work and heart attack for one day. Which made Naruto loudly complain that Kurama was made of pure chakra, he didn't have a literal heart. The joke aside, the team had to report their mission back to Hokage, and they were not looking forward to explain to Sandaime as to why his surrogate grandson looked like a mummy. Kurama thought that it was a fitting punishment for them, since none of this would have happened if they had just gotten rid of that bastard Mukai as soon as they could. The problem was, how much they could tell their leader. Amegakur. What are you up to lately? Madara. Asked the god of Amegakur, standing on the highest building of the ever-reigning hidden village. His ringed eyes gazed at the masked Uchiha napping leisurely on the edge of the roof, uncaring of his soaked clothes. The man didn't answer, and after a moment of silence the owner of Rinnegan spoke again. You've been away without telling us a thing, frankly it makes us doubt whether you being devoted to Akatsuki's cause is true. Not even a facial muscle of Nagato's favored path twitched, but they could hear the frustration dripping down his voice over the roar of rain. The Uchiha sank into the roof like a ghost before reappearing beside Nagato's path. I have been visiting your little cousin, Nagato. I have no family left in this world. Konan was the only one left. Madara chuckled softly, you can deny it all you want, but, the Jinchuriki of Cuba still shares the same blood of the Uzumaki clan as you do. In the depths of Amegakur, Nagato's real body clenched its teeth. Perhaps, but does it matter after our clan was torn apart in war? Where were their relatives from Konoha when his parents got killed? or when he struggled to live on amidst the war with his friends. And, for our cause, you will kill him with your own hands. Madara continued, the sole heir of the main family of your clan. He chuckled softly. Senju and Uzumaki call us cursed, but we're all the same in the end because blood that binds us together is just a frail shackle we will break to achieve our goal. The Uchiha chuckled softly as he vanished in a vortex of time and space, out of Nagato's reach as soon as the Uzumaki turned Yahiko's body around. Nagato narrowed his eyes at the emptiness left behind by the Uchiha, his body, and Yahiko's trembled with rage at the last words Madara uttered to him. It would be a lie to say that he didn't care even one bit when he found out that Konoha's Jinchuriki was his clansman. He couldn't be so unfeeling to think that their shared blood meant nothing, that Kyuubi Jinchuriki was just another sacrifice. Especially after he found out that unlike the two previous Jinchuriki, Uzumaki Naruto didn't live in peace in Konoha. A boy who was not even given a choice, cursed at the day of his birth for the sake of Konoha and scorned for his sacrifice. He was, another pain in Konoha, a reminder of pain, sadness, and hate to Konoha. For the last few years the boy was getting better along with the Shiamatsu clan, their vassals taking him in. However, from political standpoint, Konoha was extremely reluctant to let the boy take shelter under any faction that could threaten to take claim over him. It won't surprise Nagato at all if Uzumaki Naruto lost the protection he had now to political struggle in Konoha. There were signs of that. If there's any comfort in the inevitable fate that would befall his cousin once the Jinchuriki fell to their hands, it was how his pain would end in death. Hokage office. Naruto-kun, go to the hospital, was what the Hokage said after he took one look at the Jinchuriki. Naruto smiled sheepishly, don't worry Hokage-sama. I know it looks bad but my teammates went a little overboard with it. He cringed when Sandaime shot the two Uchiha a suspicious look, which Naruto couldn't blame him for because save for a number minor superficial wounds, Itachi and Shisui looked nowhere as bad as he did. Then Itachi and Shisui opened their mouth, we're so sorry Hokage-sama, we let our guard down and dug. Naruto elbowed both of them, shooting them a glare. Shut it! He hissed, before he unwound the bandage on his arm showing Sandaime the multiple shallow cuts that mostly healed, leaving multiple reddish-pink lines on his tanned skin. See, Sandaime-sama? It's not anything life-threatening. Thank God, Kurama was merciful to heal the burn at least. Sandaime narrowed his eyes, if it was any other shinobi he would ask for a report first and send them the nearest medic but since it was Naruto. How did you get those cuts? The Uzumaki was so glad he had prepared an excuse, because if he answered hesitantly it would give away his game. I did this to myself actually, a space and time seal I used hadn't worked as well as I wished. Naruto. He flinched. I wish I could lie, but we have bigger and more important things to hide. Space-time seal is one of most difficult branch of Fuinjutsu. You're a prodigy, but you shouldn't overestimate yourself. You could have died. He nodded, biting his lower lip nervously before his eyes shone with determination as he replied. I understand Sandaime-sama. I know I have done something extremely foolish. But I just want to protect my teammates, so I risk it. Of course, Sandaime sighed wearily. Naruto was reckless and lately he was getting rebellious, which was why Sandaime relented, making Naruto an honorary member of his umbu. However, Naruto respected the art of his clan. He would never be careless with Fuinjutsu if he could help it. Unless Itachi and Shisui were involved, that is. I guess it can't be helped. It would be unfair to get angry for Naruto if the Uzumaki was protecting his teammates. If you don't need medical help. Most likely not, since he was an Uzumaki and the Kyuubi's vessel. You can start with your report. Hi. Itachi as the team leader stepped forward. As ordered, we investigated Jonin Mukai Ko Hinata's suspected allegiance to Kiri with using a rank mission to investigate Tsunakiri meeting in Kawa no Kuni. Itachi then began to narrate how Mukai Ko Hinata lead their mission, his unprofessionalism and suspicious behavior that cost them their covered mission. On my own discretion, I sent a clone under Henge to investigate our target. He was drinking and smoking the night before his mission. He is a regular customer of that establishment and Sandaime had to say he was impressed Naruto went out his way to investigate Mukai first, though it disturbed him that little young Naruto went to a bar to get his information. Though considering his escapade as a child, which was pranking their village and running his umbu ragged, Sandaime was not surprised that Naruto was very talented in stealth and espionage mission. Mukai Ko Hinata, unlike what was informed in his file, possesses Byakugan in his left eye, which he claims is a genetic throwback since he is distantly related to Hyuga clan. That was disturbing information. A shinobi of Mukai's caliber who had served them for years and turned traitor had uninformed ability, and a bloodline at that. He defeated over 20 Sunanin on his own. It was a good thing, or pretty disturbing knowing how good these three young shinobi were at cleaning up the mess. He didn't want to imagine the mess he had to deal with if they were bad at it though. Their relation with Suna was tense enough nowadays. His relief didn't last long, not when the three young shinobi reached the most disturbing part of their mission, in which the three requested him to put his privacy seal on Max. A masked man. Itachi nodded. He claims to be Uchiha Madara. His eyes went wide at that. Impossible, he would be too old by now. Not even Mito-sama lived that long. The Uchiha heir nodded again. Hi, he was mostly on defensive when he went up against us. His fighting style was nothing like what we knew from historical records. He is powerful, yes, but I am not sure if we could describe him as a shadow of himself. His fighting style revolves around a space-time technique that allows him to teleport and become intangible. Then Itachi went at length of what they had discovered from their fight. The Hokage narrowed his eyes. He would have chided them for fighting a man that was obviously beyond their caliber, but it was also obvious it was not for their lack of escape. From what you describe of his fighting style, indeed. I who had seen the man in his prime doubt he is the same man. It's too early to draw a conclusion. The three exchanged glance, glad they confirmed that even Sandaime who knew Madara doubted the identity of the masked man they encountered. Still, we have to be in full alert, Hokage-sama, he was just toying with us. I am not sure of the reason. Perhaps it's because we're Uchiha and Uzumaki. I believe we survived the encounter simply because he had no intention of killing us in the first place. Hiruzen frowned, for the masked man to toy with these three. While officially they were ranked Chunin, as Hokage, he knew better that Itachi and Shisui were easily above average Jonin, and while Naruto was the weakest, his expertise in tactic and Fuinjutsu could have easily earned him Takubutsu Jonin rank by now. They possessed three of Muramis's legendary swords, blades equal to Mist's famed 7 swords. They were also a team with the best teamwork he had ever seen in years, perhaps even better than his own team. They might not be legendary yet like his old team, but they were strong enough to put up a fight against top shinobi of their village. They were not a team that could be toyed with, defeated perhaps, but how this masked man curb-stomped them was entirely a different matter. For them to admit they survived because their opponent was just playing with them was disconcerting. Still, if this was the same culprit of Kyuubi's escape 9 years ago, he had to protect Naruto. Suddenly Naruto coughed once and then said, "If you allow me, Hokage-sama, since we finished our oral report, may I speak with you privately?" Sandaime eyed the two Uchiha who were exchanging glances with Naruto. They looked worried about him. "You may." "Itachi-kun, Shisui-kun, do you mind to wait outside?" "Of course not, Sandaime-sama." Itachi murmured before he and Shisui exited his office as ordered. At last they were alone, and as if the Jinchuriki could read his mind, Naruto shook his head. "You can't hide me away to protect me, Hokage-sama," he told Sandaime with a sad smile. It took him a while to digest what Naruto just implied. It felt like he just had a bucket of ice water poured over his head. "Naruto, you..." His surrogate grandson continued to smile sadly. "I thought you would be happier if you thought I was still clueless about my status as Jinchuriki." It was an irony, all this time he had deceived himself that Naruto was still clueless of his status. Naruto was a seal master, there was no way he didn't realize. "Since when?" "Since I started to learn Fuinjutsu," Naruto answered vaguely. Sandaime gritted his teeth. He couldn't believe how foolish he had been. "Do you hate Konoha, Naruto?" he asked the dreaded question. The Jinchuriki sighed wearily. "In spite of everything, Konoha is my home, and in my whole life I already belonged to this village before I knew it. So it was out of duty, and as a seal master Naruto knew very well he didn't have much of a choice. That choice had been taken away from him at the night of his birth." "Then do you hate our people?" Those who scorn you for your status. Naruto paused at that before shaking his head. I don't. I can't hate them back. Sure, I don't like how they treat me, but it's not like they would change if I complained. Who said mental abuse couldn't be worse than physical abuse? Naruto couldn't even recall how he got through that still sane, oh yes, overloading his mind with positive thinking to the point of being delusional. That's beside the point though. He swiftly changed the topic at the dark look on the Sandaime's face. Itachi once asked me the same question. That earned him a surprised look from Sandaime. I would be lying if I said I am not tempted, since, well, I haven't done anything to deserve their hatred. However, I also realize hating them back will just make me more miserable. I want to be happy, so I turn my attention to something else. Fuinjutsu. So you're saying while you don't hate them, you don't love them either. I will not lie. It's hard to love people who don't even see you as a person. He didn't ask them to like him, his standard was set as low as treating him as a person. However, as a shinobi of Konoha, I will protect them with my life, regardless of my personal feelings. It pained Sarutobi's heart to hear that, but he couldn't blame Naruto for feeling that way. By right, Naruto could hate them and it was justified. So do you still desire them to acknowledge you? His smile turned sad at that. I am not so sure myself either, Hokage-sama. Since I found out about my status, I told myself that I didn't need them acknowledging me. I would be happier if I focused on my career, my life, and forget they even exist. I see. However, the Hokage straightened. Lately I began to wonder if it's the right thing. Deep down perhaps I still wish to prove I am not a monster. I still want them to see me as Uzumaki Naruto of Konoha. Naruto-kun, you. He sighed wearily. I am so sorry. I wish I could do more for you. The Uzumaki laughed softly. Don't apologize for this, Hokage-sama. It's not like I am not happy with myself now. I have friends, people who acknowledge me as Uzumaki Naruto. You deserve better. He admitted with a heavy heart. I admit I am pretty greedy, Hokage-sama. I don't know about deserving better. But I desire a lot of things, including world peace. He said in wistful voice. Sandaime broke to a smile at that. He sounded like Jiraiya. Oh, you dream big, my boy. We do. He was referring to himself and his team. We're getting off track, however, Hokage-sama. The Sandaime became still at that. Konoha can't afford to lose you. I understand, Hokage-sama, but considering the masked man's ability to cross dimensions, I doubt hiding in a safe house would do me any good. Also, I have always been in danger, yet, we just became aware of him now. Sandaime flinched, but he couldn't deny Naruto's statement. Besides, from what we saw in our previous mission, I think he is not interested in me or the Biju sealed in me, not now at least. Speculation and assumption aren't enough to convince me, Naruto-kun. The Hokage pointed out. He shrugged, a sound one in my opinion, considering I am alive and made it to Konoha. If he really wants me, he could have taken me away before I could defend myself. He certainly had me in his mercy. The Hokage felt his heart almost stop at the certainty in Naruto's voice, that the boy would have been truly dead if this masked man wanted him to die. He just did it to taunt Itachi and Shisui. The Hokage swallowed. I don't like the sound of that, but I admit you have a point, Naruto-kun. I know, it's my life at stake here, but I don't see the point in hiding. Especially since I am not sure we know any way to hide a Jinchuriki like me, unless of course you know how, Sandaime-sama. He leaned in curiously. He hated to admit it, but hiding a Jinchuriki for a long period was impossible. Which was why their intelligence department worked overtime to hide Naruto's status from the world. Not to mention this masked man interrupted an Umbu mission, that was a serious breach in their secrecy. We still have to protect you. He sighed. If it's any comfort for you, Hokage-sama, I have proven myself capable of escaping from him. Granted. I can't get away unscathed, but better than nothing. On the other hand, what could Hokage Azumbu do in that situation? Nothing. Sandaime eyed his mummy-like state with worry. He knew it would be cruel to ignore Naruto's feelings considering what the boy had been through, but he vowed to his successor that he would protect Naruto at all costs. Still, Naruto's points were sound. They can't protect him forever and they don't know how to hide Naruto at this point. Fine. I will send my Umbu to investigate about this mysterious man. Though he doubted they would get anywhere in finding this not Madara. At least now he was sure the culprit of Kyuubi's attack was not any Uchiha from Konoha, so he could trust the clan, it was innocent. That was a load of burden gone off of his shoulders. As for you Naruto-kun, you will be excused from your duty in regular force. In which those missions left him in the open, and your visit to capital unfortunately will be on hold for a while. Naruto shrugged, I suppose I can talk with Asudano to arrange something. Sandaime sighed, I am sure you can arrange something that works for you, Naruto-kun. Rubbing his temples tiredly, he added. Considering my experience with your misadventure. The Jinchuriki had the decency to look sheepish at least. Completely confining you in our village is pointless, so I will still let you to take high-ranked mission with Team Ro. Kakashi didn't know who Sekirei was, but Sandaime trusted Kakashi would protect his teacher's legacy. Really? Which wouldn't be any for a long while, especially since your division is planning to redesign the seal of our defense mechanism. Sandaime pointed out. Naruto sighed at that, I understand. You may go now. Naruto-kun. As you wish, Hokage-sama. He bowed. Wait. One hand on the doorknob, Naruto glanced back at his Kage. Yes. Why, did you stop calling me your grandfather? He asked, his expression was pained. No, will you ever call me grandfather ever again? Naruto inhaled softly, I want you take me seriously as your shinobi, for you to acknowledge me more than just a weak child you have to protect. As for will I ever call you my grandfather again? He turned the doorknob and said. I hope someday I will. Hokage-sama. He murmured softly, his cerulean eyes gazed back to the old Kage before hiding beneath the mask of Sekirei. Click. Outside of Hokage's office. Naruto didn't even twitch when Itachi and Shisui appeared by his side in their Umbu gear. How was it? Better than I hope, I suppose. He said in a low voice. I will tell you the details later. Itachi nodded, can you still go on missions? Naruto looked down, no low-rank missions, considering the secrecy. I am allowed to join Team Ro whenever I am needed. I am mostly confined in Konoha, but it's not so bad considering I'm better off in Konoha to handle our current situation. I see. Shisui hummed, I suppose we dash dot. He stopped, Ryukin Taijo. He waved his hand to the Umbu captain who was walking in their direction, it seemed it was his turn to guard Hokage-sama. Hatake Kakashi in his Umbu gear inclined his head to them in greeting. Back from your mission I see. How was it? He was trying to be natural with Sekirei and his team after their previous meeting. Their mission was classified, but as their captain, he had enough clearance to know the outline. We accomplished our mission's objective at least, but not as well as we hoped. Shisui reported with a shrug. He chuckled softly. Rough mission. Shisui nodded, an understatement, but we covered up properly so Hokage-sama doesn't have to deal with any leftover problem at least. The Hatake frowned at that, I see. Hatake eyed Sekirei warily, the seal master looked tense and he seemed to struggle holding the tsurugi on his waist. Sekirei, are you alright? I am fine, my teammates just went overboard with wrapping me up like this. He showed his exposed hand, see? Nothing to worry about. Kakashi was sure it was only because Sekirei was an Uzumaki that there was nothing to worry about. Yes, I see. Tenzu chuckled, you look like Danzu-sama. Hush, Toriniko. Kakashi admonished his second-in-command lightly. Sekirei snorted, ha ha ha, very funny Torinko Fukutaijo. Kakashi's eyes softened beneath his mask, the way Sekirei responded to Tenzu's teasing reminded him a little of Obito. Though their personality was nothing alike, he felt Sekirei had a similar air with his old friend. Obito would get along with Sekirei if... Ugh. Why is his Sherry on suddenly? Taijo. Itachi began, eyeing the hand that was covering the left eye hole of his mask. Is there something wrong with your... The prodigy trailed off. Sekirei moved quickly, can you take your mask off for a moment? It won't do if you are unwell before your shift, Taijo. For some reason the tone in Sekaire's voice made him unable to refuse, so he lowered his mask to allow Sekaire to view his eyes. Good. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong, but, are you not sleeping well lately, Taijo? Kakashi tensed. He had been having nightmares about Obito and Rin again lately for some reason. I suppose. I still get enough sleep to function though. You may not notice, but the Sharingan is a jujutsu that is heavily affected by your mentality. Sekaire said in serious tone. Itachi and Shisui nodded at that. I am not surprised you didn't know, Taijo. Just a suggestion, try to use the Sharingan to record relaxing memory, meditating and so on. Ah. I see, I will take care of Obito's Sharingan. Thank you for telling me. He gave them a nice smile. Then he noticed Sekaire was staring long and hard at him. Sekaire. The pseudo-umbu jolted. I am just thinking why you can't deactivate your Sharingan. Kakashi laughed softly at that. It's not originally mine, so I can't. That must be hard. Sekaire nodded sagely, especially since Taijo has neither the stamina nor a large chakra reserve. Kakashi's sweat dropped at his blunt assessment while Tenzo gaped in shock. Very observant of you, Sekaire. Kakashi was sure Sekaire got an eyeful of him panting like his hound after running from Senju's old fort to their rendezvous point on the previous mission, which was how the younger shinobi found out. But you sure didn't hold back at all. Kakashi himself didn't know why, but since he received Obito's gift, his stamina and chakra reserves were growing at a snail's pace. Then again, even when closed, his Sharingan still consumes a small amount of chakra. Sekaire was still looking at him oddly. Ryukin Taijo, where were you yesterday? I was on patrol duty with the rest of our squad on the north. Kakashi answered promptly. As fellow umbu, this kind of information wasn't classified. Sekaire glanced at Tenzo. I was there. Is something wrong? The Uzumaki seemed flustered beneath his mask before answering. No. Forget I asked, it's nothing. That aside, why was Sekaire so interested in his Sharingan tonight? He had 2 Uchiha in his team, surely Sharingan was nothing novel to the Seal Master. He had a job to do, so the strange questioning quickly escaped Kakashi's mind. On the other hand, Naruto kept glancing back at Kakashi, who was on standby beside Hokage's door. His heart thumping wildly as he recalled the brief moment Kakashi's Sharingan morphed to a kaleidoscope pattern. It might be his fear and paranoia talking, but for a moment a flicker of chakra coming from Hatake Kakashi's eyes. It felt as foul as that man's tainted one. How could it be possible that Hatake Kakashi had any connection with the Uchiha from 9 years ago? Chapter 23, 23rd Legacy. It was on the long walk back to Sealing Tower Itachi voiced out the nagging question in his mind. What's wrong with Kakashi-san's Sharingan? Itachi asked. Naruto glanced at his teammates warily. It's just, Naruto frowned deeper. Hatake-san is the only survivor of his team, so perhaps that stopped both Itachi and Shisui on their track. Is that possible when he isn't an Uchiha? How skilled he is with Sharingan is already unusual, Prodigy or not, so, maybe. Naruto shrugged. Though, when he took his umbu mask off, I swear, for a moment I saw the tomo of his Sharingan morphed to something unusual like yours did. Itachi grimaced. So Obitonia's eyes already? He shook his head. I only catch a glimpse of it, so I am unsure. But from close inspection of his Sharingan, I am surprised he has 3 tomo. That's enough proof to say his Sharingan can grow stronger even though he is not an Uchiha. I see. Itachi grunted. Well, he is a formidable shinobi. He even surpasses most of our clansmen in Sharingan mastery. Naruto hummed. Actually, my biggest concern is not how good he is at using Sharingan or possibility that he has Mangekyo. You're worried about how tasking Sharingan is for him. Shisui guessed. He lives with that for 10 years, so not really. That jujutsu put a strain in his body, but he wasn't in peril if for years Medic Nin didn't find anything dangerous. It's just, for a very brief moment, I think I feel he has similar air to that masked man. What? Naruto groaned. I know it's weird. I don't get it myself either. But for some reason, he reminds me of Hatake-san. The blonde looked troubled as he said this. Shisui paused. Hey, Naruto, didn't you use Satori a bit too much lately? I did not. I just forgot to tighten the seal filter after our mission. I am so used to you two. Namely with their thought in chakra. I didn't notice it's still on. Itachi grimaced, then now. Why do you think I am so blunt with him? My head hurts so much I can't even muster enough patience to sugarcoat my words. No wonder Naruto was strangely short-tempered tonight, and they thought he was just unhappy and stressed with Sandaime's decision. Sealing Tower. It was around 8, so it was not so late, but Naruto and his friends were confused about why there was a party in their backyard. Not to mention the participant of the party consist of Sealing Division plus officers of Konoha Military Police. They didn't seem to be drunk though. Naruto could smell what they had, which consist of barbecued meat and vegetable, and tea for drink. Air. Shisui trailed off. What are you guys doing? He asked. Tekka, who was toasting his tea with Mikumo, answered. We're celebrating comradeship. Too bad we're still on duty, so we skip on alcohol. Right. Itachi was unsure he should be happy or suspicious. Suddenly the tower and his clan got along swimmingly. Where's my father? And Hakure? Naruto added. In unison, Mikumo and Tekka pointed at one corner of the yard where Uchiha Fugaku and Shiamatsu Hakure were sitting across each other with a fire camp between them. They looked solemn as staring at the fire burning between them. Oto-san. Hakure. The two young shinobi called them. What's going on here? It was Hakure who answered, celebrating friendship or something. I don't know. Somehow this afternoon Iwafune and Hyoshao dragged Yashiro-san to my office, and they believe after overworked for a week we deserve a party. We get to veto the alcohol at least. So far we managed to get everything in check, with scheduling party and patrol shift. It's either this, or our subordinates will start a riot, and we already have enough headache from this mess. Fugaku was cradling the cup of tea on his lap and he looked eerily frail in that pose. And Ka-san is fine with this? Itachi wondered. Fugaku craned his neck at one direction where his wife was happily distributing food among their clansmen and members of Sealing Division. Yuzo-chan. We don't have enough tea over here. Yes, Mikoto-san. Yuzuru chimered in. Inabi. Hyoshao-san. Your team is on patrol shift next. Hi. Naruto, Itachi, and Shisui had one same thought. What the heck happened here when we were gone? Shisui grinned at his team. How nice, KMPF and Sealing Division are getting along swimmingly. He beamed. Itachi and Naruto, however, didn't smile. Their jaws were set and eyes narrowed at the scene of comradeship. Naru-chan. Ida-chan. They had been very quiet and it started to scare Shisui, and not even getting called with their unfavorite nick get a reaction out of them. You think so, Shisui? Itachi murmured softly. This is nice. Shisui became even more confused. Yeah. I mean, getting friendly with each other is good for them. Naruto inhaled deeply. Yeah, but you forget the why they start to get along. It took only a few seconds for Shisui to compute what his teammates were implying. He was, after all, a genius too, even though unlike Itachi and Naruto were never overly concerned about the fine art of reading between the lines. Oh shit. Their clan and Sealing Division were getting along on the ground of alienation and dissatisfaction towards Konohagakure. Either this would work well for their purpose of blow up in the most spectacular way. By the way, Naruto-sama? Why do you look like a mummy? Hakure asked forlornly, too tired to care why the three prodigies were whispering amongst themselves. Fugaku looked up from his drink. Not that I'm not glad you're fine, my son and nephew, but why Naruto-kun isn't at the hospital? Where to start again? The next day. So, we have to create a barrier that cut off space-time technique. Hakure drawled on with distressed voice. Just his. Naruto corrected. Frankly, I don't know where to start. Not without dissecting that rogue Uchiha to understand the mechanism of his space-time technique. All we know about it are, it's superior to Hiration, it crosses to his personal dimension before teleporting somewhere else, and it makes him nigh invulnerable. Hakure frowned. Fugaku-kun is holding up in their clan's achieve, but looking at how shocked he was when Itachi-kun explained this rogue's technique, I am pretty sure there is no Uchiha recorded with that kind of ability. Clan's secret be damned at this point, so Fugaku went behind their elders' back to check their record. At least now the Uchiha clan is focusing that pent-up frustration somewhere else instead of their coup. He was unsure how long that would last, especially since Naruto was, even more, worried his people were getting too sympathetic with Uchiha clan. It was good for them, but Naruto was worried they would grow to hate Konoha even more. Well, he diverted their attention to something else at least. They were so busy to the point they started to accept new recruits from a civilian background, only to help the office work, but it was a start. Though he had to thank Isuji for those 2 civilian workers they got from the capital. Now, if only someone from Yamanaka clan responded to that recruitment poster he begged Inoichi-san to post in his clan's compound, or Nara or Aburame, even an Akamika would be welcome. Even at the state of compromised security they still had to worry about public image, or was it the other way around? They were worrying about public image and had to worry about the security breach on top of it? The next day. It was a good experiment all things considered, and it didn't even blow up on the face was the cherry on the top. Using nature energy gathered by sentient plants he nurtured as replacement of battery big and ugly thing it was an energy source was revolutionary, and he was sure it would be a boost for Konoha and the tower in the future. Though for now, he had no time to marvel on the revolutionary idea as hawk-like eyes of Tokugawa Ieyasu gazing back at him from television's screen. So you survive the encounter with the maybe Uchiha Madara. Hi. Ieyasu inspected his nails as if it was the most interesting thing in the world, though in Naruto's opinion he looked more like a tiger inspecting his claws and calculating how to rip his enemies apart. Though, whether or not he is Uchiha's missing ancestor doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Since 1, he is still missing and occasionally pops up in Konoha for who knows why. 2, you can't catch him yet. 3, he is strong enough to match Yondaime and most likely will be able to defeat anyone Konoha could throw at him. In short, Madara or not, they were screwed. Naruto nodded slowly. That's more or less our current situation now. Ieyasu grunted, and you're forced to spill to Sandaime that you know about your Jinchuriki status. Does that displease you, Ieyasu? It's not like I can keep it a secret forever. It was good when it lasted though, he thought to himself wistfully. I can't negotiate with Hokage-sama if he still thinks I am oblivious of my Jinchuriki status. He barely escaped full confinement. The Shadow Ruler shrugged. Ma, you're right, you can't keep it a secret forever, considering the latest trouble you get yourself into. Naruto harumphed, as Ieyasu made it as if he was doing it on purpose. Or rather, more like you can't keep your Hokage in a bliss of ignorance. It's ironic really, you the one he wants to protect and yet. It's not my intention to play him a fool. True, but I can tell, deep down it soothes your wounded child's heart to return the pain he unknowingly inflicted on you in the name of greater good. Ieyasu returned in a saccharine tone. Naruto opened his mouth, rebuke on the tip of his tongue before he swallowed everything. Perhaps, deep down I am still a child, after all, it feels good really. It scares me it does. It was not a lie he didn't want to hate people who made him suffer back, however it didn't stop him from wishing they could taste even a drop of his pain sometimes. Well, he never claimed he was a saint and it was perfectly human to wish for other people to understand his pain. Misery loves company and all. You're just being human, Naruto-kun. Ieyasu mused, if anything it's relieving to know you're capable of negative emotion. Naruto frowned, of course I am. Ha, you don't get it. Ieyasu shakes his head with an expression that was a mix of worry and exasperation. Satori, you're using it extensively in your last mission. He nodded guiltily, my apologies, everyone warns me not to but in last mission, I just can't help it. Those hawk-like eyes narrowed at him and Naruto flinched, just can't help it, you said. He echoed. As if you have no choice but to rely on Satori, don't think you can fool me, Naruto-kun. It came back again, the feeling of oppression he felt around this person. It had nothing to do with presence, as Ieyasu was not even here in person. You want to understand right? Heh. What did Ieyasu just said? The hawk-eyed man smirked, you want to understand why that man unleashed Kyuubi at the night of your birth, and turn your life upside down. Was it vengeance? Or a whim of a madman? He shrugged his shoulders in an exaggerated manner. That must be your lifelong question, so when you come face to face with that masked man you can't help yourself. His face burned in shame because he knew Ieyasu was right. Seriously, that side of yours must be from Muramasa, too curious from your own good. You just can't hate people on principle like normal people, always want to get on the why before making a fair judgment. Ieyasu mused, talking more to himself than to Naruto. Ma, that's why I admire Muramasa. Naruto recalled what Hakure had told him about Muramasa and came up with blank on what similarity he and his grandfather shared. After all, his grandfather was like that, in which Hakure described Muramasa as an airhead with the attention span of a puppy even though he was a brilliant shinobi. And that's why he fell to Satoru's curse. Huh? Curse? What do you mean by curse? Ieyasu sighed. Well, curse is just how I prefer to call it, but it's more like the perfect match made in hell. As you have been informed, Satori is a bloodline Senju clan bred specifically to make up the weakened body of the sage they inherited from their ancestor. So they bring shaman blood to their clan. Shaman is spiritualist, right? Unlike shinobi, they augmented their spiritual energy but not their physical, so they could converse with spirit. Shinobi who start using summon animal, originally descend from shaman line. Naruto recounted of what he knew of shaman. There are so few of them now though. And before the era of shinobi, sage of six paths was considered a shaman. Ieyasu sighed. Obviously Senju clansmen who were dabbling in their little project to create Satoru didn't really know what they were doing. So they didn't watch out for one little mishap that cost them Satoru. His eyes narrowed, silently demanding an explanation. The person who was born with Satoru tend to be too sympathetic. At the confused look on his face, Ieyasu sighed. That's not a bad thing on itself, but Satoru they possessed made it catastrophic for them. They want to understand and sympathize with people, even with their enemies, and worst criminal out there, and Satoru gave them means to know but not to understand. Then those thoughts, slowly become poison to them, it tore their mind apart. Which is why, when Muramasa was betrayed not just by his fellow fire guardian who became traitor, and my father who misused his trust. It broke him apart, even his seal can't protect him, it's no wonder really, in the end, after he returned to Konoha he didn't live long. His grandfather died because of Satoru? Why Haku? Hakure most likely didn't know, and I know because I saw Muramasa when he was at his lowest after my father killed my brother using Hokurakushimon. I thought Muramasa was going to die, his health deteriorated and he resigned from his position. He inhaled sharply. I don't want to see that again, Naruto-kun, so I will tell you this. Naruto swallowed heavily. Turn your eyes away from Satoru, it's tempting, especially for someone in your position. Who for most of his life couldn't understand the misplaced hatred aimed to him. I know you're using Satoru mostly to augment innate ability Kyuubi shared with you, that's fine, but not even once you should rely on Satoru to understand people. In the end, Satoru is a result of human misadventure in search of power. He lowered his head in shame. No, you don't. Naruto shrunk on his seat. This recklessness of yours merits some scolding this time, and don't tell me Hiruzen or Hakure already did it. Because I know you will just guilt-trip Hiruzen into giving leeway to you and Hakure wouldn't dare to raise his voice at you. No, I am not. He rose from his seat abruptly, knocking several objects from his desk. Buzz. Bzz. Naruto's eyes widened when he saw his chakra inkwell was all over the seal formula and battery. Oh, she. Boom. 3 hours later. Iwaya, he looks depressed. Naruto, I thought you were just talking through television to Ieyasu-sama. So why you're so? Shisui trailed off. It exploded? What did you do? Naruto turned his face towards them, lips trembled and eyes wide in shock. I am never, in my life I got scolded, lectured, for hours, for a legitimate reason, I couldn't argue with it all and. The exploding TV aside, most of his shock was from the scolding. Shisui was torn between laughing and taking pity on Naruto. His friend was in shock because he just got scolded by Tokugawa Ieyasu, his crazy uncle and future father-in-law. I see. He covered his smiling lips. Itachi was looking at anything but Naruto, his shoulders were shaking with mirth. They couldn't help it, this was their first time to see Naruto looking like a kicked puppy. A very adorable and sad puppy. Naruto was shaking now, he didn't seem like he was about to cry, which was a relief, but it was obvious he was not fine. Shisui sighed with fond expression in his face. Well, whatever Ieyasu-sama scolded him for, Naruto obviously take it to his heart and understand what he has done wrong. Shisui cleared his throat and opened his arms. Hi, come over here, little brother. Naruto still looking at nowhere, spacing out. So Shisui approached him and drew him to a hug. There, you're a good boy. Naruto is a good boy. He patted Naruto's back comfortingly. Somehow the gesture snapped Naruto back to his sense. What the heck you're doing? Good boy, you're dash. The Uchiha beamed. Ah. Obito used to do it to me whenever I got scolded by adults in the clan for misbehavior. He would give me a big hug and pat my back. Obito. He also poked Itachi's forehead whenever he played with us. Itachi's bang is like that, so he said it feels like an invitation to poke Itachi there, Shisui added. He closed his eyes. He seems to be someone who influences you too greatly, Hatake too. Recalling dark-haired boy who can't leave people in trouble alone. Tosan had always wanted Obito to be his successor. That surprised Shisui and Itachi. He did. Naruto gave them a melancholic smile. He is my parents' favorite, and I am always jealous of him. Because for all imperfectness, Uchiha Obito was the boy who became the origin of their wish for a son. They wished to have a child just like Obito. And yet, Naruto was nothing like Obito, too jaded because of his past. Uchiha Lake. The seals were tiger, ram, monkey, boar, horse, tiger. Inhale deeply while drawing chakra from chakra pool on the abdomen and then exhale the air and chakra in one go. The expelled air and chakra then formed a roaring flame that will leave devastation in its wake. Or so Sasuke hoped. Since the flame was impressive for a bonfire as an attack, it was barely adequate. Certainly not going to impress his father, as Itachi did at 6 years old. He was pretty confident with his larger than average chakra pool, but for some reason, he couldn't expel as much as he wanted in one go. Maybe he needed a larger reserve, or he missed something to master Gukaku no Jutsu. Hello, Sasuke-kun. He jumped in shock before whirling around to see Uzumaki Naruto with an apologetic look. Naruto sensei. He just started learning in Sealing Tower for a few days, so he had to address all certified Seal Master as sensei. The Seal Master blinked. It was the first time they met since Sasuke started learning Fuinjutsu, so it took a while for him to compute the sudden change of address. Ah, did I surprise you? I apologize. It's fine. I was the one spacing out. Sasuke assured the blonde quickly. Are you looking for Nisan? Sensei? He is not around though. Had not been for days, even though he was already home since 2 days ago. It was nothing strange. Itachi tried to hide it, but Sasuke knew sometimes his brother avoided coming home after his mission and Shisui would cover for him. Naruto narrowed his eyes at that. Ah, yes. Itachi is in my place now. He and Shisui are helping me with some project. So now Naruto also helped to cover his brother. I see, then why you're here, sensei? Actually, I am just running an errand for Seal Masters on duty with KMPF when I saw you, and when I finished you're still here, so I decided to say hi. Sasuke blinked, then realized it was getting dark. It was unusual for Uchiha for dropping by just for casual greeting. Shisui-san was an exception, so it sounded strange for Sasuke. The Seal Master just came over to say hi to him of all people. The Uzumaki waved his hand, and also to warn you that your chakra reserve already run low, and around 2 Gukaku later you will exhaust your reserve. Oh. He knew he was exhausted, but since he was not experienced in using his chakra yet, he couldn't tell his reserves level. And before he could stop himself, Sasuke added. Did you see my Gukaku? He asked in embarrassment. The blonde blinked. Ah yes, I did. At the disheartened look Sasuke wore, he hastily added. You have been training for 2 weeks, I heard. In that short time for an elemental technique you did admirably in my opinion. I need to train harder. Sasuke concluded. You don't need to hold back the critiques, Naruto-sensei. In comparison to Prodigy's and Itachi's or Naruto's caliber, his attempt at elemental technique would look pretty pathetic. It was a surprise to Sasuke for Naruto to be kind. He didn't seem to be the type to sugarcoat his opinion. At the retort, the Seal Master frowned. Sasuke-kun, you. He trailed off with a cocked eyebrow. See no one else but Itachi as a standard to measure yourself, don't you? Sasuke flushed, and now he was being so blunt and saw through the young Uchiha. It was a surreal experience for Sasuke to be seen through by someone he was not familiar with. Naruto might be Itachi's best friend other than Shisui, but Sasuke didn't know him personally that well. Well, aiming high is good, I think. Sasuke stuttered. And Nisan is the most per dash. Naruto sighed, cutting off Sasuke's line. I didn't say it's wrong to aim high, it's just that. Naruto's eyes softened. Looking at his back all the time isn't the only path for you. As your brother, Itachi consider himself as a wall you have to surpass, but if you only look at his back, you might lose sight of everything else. The blonde said in a forlorn voice. Sasuke became confused. He sounded like he was talking about personal experience. But you're a prodigy, Naruto-sensei. Sasuke gritted out. We're the same age and yet. He was shocked when he found out that his brother's best friend was actually his age, graduated at 7 like Itachi and even beat Itachi's record to Chunin rank. He couldn't help but be envious, that someone his age could be Itachi's equal. You won't understand. He finished, ashamed how petty he was but unable to hide it well. The Uzumaki returned his gaze unwaveringly, then said with an amused voice. Well, if everyone in the world can easily understand one another so easily, war would never exist. Huh. Why suddenly he was talking about war? He smiled at the young Uchiha. Could you try one more time? Sasuke swallowed. There was something in that smile that made him feel obliged to do as ordered. Was Uzumaki Naruto really the same age as him? He certainly didn't act like it. Hi. Sasuke went through the set of seals he had become very familiar with, inhaling and then exhale. Gukaku no Jutsu. Then a tanned hand moved from the corner of his eyes and then the small ball of fire he emitted burst forward and grew larger, even larger than one his father demonstrated to him. He looked at the Uzumaki with awe and shock. Just now, you. I am just lending you a hand, a breeze of wind for your fire, because the only thing that can keep a fire from dying and give it more power, is wind. Wind. An element of movement that grows, expand, free of restriction. It gives power and speed to fire to burn everything in their path. So, your element complement my brother's fire. He sounded sheepish, my elemental affinity that made Shisui christen me his best friend on record time aside. Sasuke could imagine his cousin did that. He was a pyromaniac even by Uchiha standard. Could you see it now? The image of Gukaku no Jutsu you want to breathe out. When you started on learning elemental techniques, an image is very important so your chakra can respond better to your intention. You're not used to using your chakra extensively, so your chakra is not needed thoroughly inside your body before converting it to fire element. A strong image of your desired effect will help. He was giving Sasuke tips. Oh. Sasuke felt embarrassed he didn't get such a simple intention to help him. Then again, sometimes he didn't get his own brother's train of thought. I will try again then. He wanted to tell the Uzumaki to not help this time, but he felt silly to say such a thing when he saw Naruto crossed his arms with a knowing look. The fire he saw just now, it was released through his mouth as a thin torrent that slowly expanded to a bigger orb of fire as he continued to out more chakra to it. So it was like filling a vessel with more fire. Gukaku no Jutsu. This time the fire was bigger than he usually achieved, not as big as one assisted by Naruto's wind but bigger than his father's and undoubtedly a respectable Gukaku worthy of an Uchiha. I did it! He exclaimed. The Uzumaki laughed softly. Congratulations! Sasuke! Huh! Sasuke fell on his knees. My legs. They felt wobbly and he couldn't muster any strength to get them to move. The Uzumaki sighed at him, with an understanding look mixed with amusement. You're running low on chakra, not serious enough to require medical attention, but I think you need a good rest and a lift back to your home. Sasuke nodded stiffly before he computed what the last part of Naruto's sentence was implying. Naruto-sensei, I don't wo. There we go. And the next thing Sasuke knew, he was already on the blonde's back, just like how his brother carried him when he got hurt. Sasuke grumbled some protest, but the Uzumaki pointedly ignored him. It's fine, I knew you're running low and make you try again, so the least I could do is carrying you back home. Sasuke quieted down at that. He hated troubling people, especially someone he didn't know well like Naruto. He sighed and decided to roll with it. His mother would be happy he got along with Itachi's best friend. Speaking of his brother. Naruto-sensei. Yes. Is there something troubling you, Nisan and Shisui-san? He asked hesitantly. There was no tensing or any outward reaction, but the short pause was enough to Sasuke to tell there was something wrong indeed. Why did you ask me? He asked back instead. Sasuke had a lot of people dodging his question, and the biggest offender was his own brother. Shisui was almost as bad, with trying to distract him all the time. He was not going to have another person ignore him, Naruto-san, who didn't even have age as an excuse his rank be demmed to ignore him. I want to know because I am worried, and I ask you because Nisan will make me wait for next time, who knows when. Sasuke grumbled, recalling his brother's excuse. Shisui-san will try to distract me with something else and ditch me when I didn't buy his excuse, so that leaves you. The Uzumaki sighed. Ah, really, those two? He sounded resigned, as if he was used to cleaning up after Itachi and Shisui. Naruto-sensei. Sasuke's grip on his shoulder tightened. You will not ignore me, right? If you keep quiet just because you're already a shinobi, or some lame reason you're a scaredy cat. A ninja shouldn't run away from a difficult question. That taunt earned him an eye twitch. You're not even older than I am, so grown-up excuse doesn't work for you. The twitch was getting bigger. For the first time since Naruto carried him, the Seal Master inclined his head to look at him. Seriously, Sasuke-kun, and here I thought you're still unfamiliar with me, and the next thing I know you're blackmailing me, if you're not the brother Itachi loved to death. He grumbled to himself. Listen, when you're a shinobi you deal with many things you can't share with civilians or anyone who isn't shinobi yet. He snorted. Classified information, that's a lame standard excuse. Naruto-sensei. It's not an excuse, it's a fact. You knew we're all part of Umbu, right? Sasuke quieted down at that. Secrecy is the core of our profession, you will understand once you get to that level, so don't ask Itachi and Shisui anymore. Even though we're shinobi, we would like to avoid lying to our family when it's possible. It hurts them when they were forced to lie to him. Sasuke frowned, but I want to help. Then he waited for the blonde to say something along the like he can't, and growled. Then help. Huh. I said, you may help us, for now just continue what you do best for Itachi. He finished. Sasuke swallowed. What is it? Being there for him. Itachi is a complicated person, but his happiness comes from simplest thing like eating sweets and doting on his little brother. Sasuke blushed a deep red at the last part. The young Uchiha grunted, but I want to be more help. And what do you have in mind then? If nothing else come to mind. The Uzumaki trailed off. It's unfair. Sasuke scowled before he could stop himself. Why can't I be like you or Itachi at least a little? We're the same age. Sasuke grumbled, but at the first sight no one can't tell. Naruto-sensei act like an old man, like Nisan. Why is that both of you so aged? He sweat dropped. I got that a lot, but hearing that straight from a kid is kinda. His left eye twitched violently. I am older than you by 2 months. Sasuke pointed out smugly. My psychology eval says. I am in my late 20s though. Before Sasuke could call him old, he added. So is Itachi. Shisui is the only one in the team whose mental age match his real age. He sounded like he doubted the last part. Sasuke frowned. Why are you and Itachi so old? Life and Kagebunshin happens. I don't get it. Good. The young Uchiha scowled. He knew this was one of those things Naruto and Itachi won't bother to explain to him. So unfair. Life is unfair. The Uzumaki answered smoothly. Say. Sasuke, if you really want to help us that badly. He nodded enthusiastically. Do you have friends at the academy? He could help. But how having a friend at the academy had anything to do it? Not really, they're annoying, especially Kiba and the girls. He heaved a sigh. Ah, good, at least you have a kid-like opinion about your classmates. Huh. Do you really have no one you don't mind being around with in class, Sasuke? He asked again. I don't mind Shino or his bug, so I usually sit beside him. The girls won't get near because they're scared of his bug. In short, Shino was his fangirl repellent and he didn't mind joining Shino for group-related activity in class. It was some sort of symbiosis or so Shino said. Shikamaru, Anara is so lazy it's so sad to look at him, but he and Chuji at least know how to be quiet and they're not too annoying in comparison to the rest of my classmates. Oh, Shikamaru-kun and Shino-kun, huh? You're also in the same class with them for sealing foundation course, any? Yeah, there's a girl from my class named Sakura. An odd girl, in a good way, because she had her nose stuck on her book all the time to the point she didn't care about him at all. If anything, Sasuke had a feeling she looked down on him because he was ranked first in class and yet struggle in sealing class to keep up. To be fair, few in jutsu class require more complicated mathematics and difficult kanji than one taught in class. And another girl a year above me in academy, she is very interested in Uchiha's Fumashu Uriken Jutsu. If Sasuke recalled correctly, her name was Tenten, an orphan without a surname. She thought he was cute, but she was more interested in the sharp pointy weapon than in him, so she was okay too. Well, I guess you can start helping with talking to them. Naruto told him. Huh? How is that helping you and Nissan? Sasuke wondered. This is not a ploy to get me to make friends, right? His mother had chided him for being a loner, and unlike Itachi, he didn't have an excuse of graduating early. The Uzumaki snorted, ha ha ha, no. While I did hear your mother complaining about your not-so-wonderful social life at the academy. Sasuke flushed at that. I am not a shining example at being social myself, and making friends can't be forced. I mean, you can start being more approachable. Considering the current policy with early graduation, you will graduate with your classmates and put in a 3-man cell with them. You have to trust 2 of them with your life throughout your career as genin. I am not sure how to explain this will help us in the long run, but it's catching 2 birds with 1 stone, any. Sasuke frowned. He was used with Itachi being cryptic, so he didn't protest. I will do my best to graduate early too. Isn't that how you choose your teammates? I am already a certified seal master not long after I become genin. A perk of being a seal master is that there is so few of us, it's considered a waste of resource to send us to normal mission, which is also why I am placed on reserve while working in Konoha. The Uzumaki explained. The young Uchiha hummed, so there were a lot of benefit for a seal master considering they were scarce. Still, Sasuke didn't expect Naruto to be more open about himself. He wouldn't let this chance slip. Then how you get teamed up with Nissan and Shisui-san? The detail is classified, but let's just say, I was their mission for a while because of my unusual circumstances. For being the last Uzumaki perhaps. Their captain thought it's a good idea to arrange a playdate like we have the same wavelength or something. At first, it was just Itachi and then he brought Shisui along and the next thing we knew we get stuck together. Sasuke had to admit when he first met Naruto he also thought someone who was not Shisui and knew Itachi so well must have shared the same wavelength with Aniki. I am sorry to say, I don't share Itachi's wavelength, as I don't get his taste for dango, and those overly sweet snacks. His dropping IQ when you're concerned and many more. He listed on, and Sasuke had to appreciate the Uzumaki politely ignoring his gaping. You can read mind. There was a long pause that made Sasuke wondered if Uzumaki clan had secretly developed mind-reading technique like Yamanaka. I'm not reading your mind, I'm just guessing. Sasuke frowned at that. Wait, what do you mean Nissan's IQ drop? Nissan is the smartest, the best. I can't drop his IQ or whatever. Sure you can, you just never see. The blonde grumbled discernibly about cats and harassment. We're here. Naruto announced and Sasuke looked up to see his house was in sight, and his mother was just returned from shopping for dinner when she spotted them. Naruto-kun. Sasuke-kun. Mama. Did his mother just squeal? Sorry for the trouble. Did you carry Sasuke home? Thank you, my sons didn't know their limit sometimes. Naruto on the other hand as always looked very awkward in responding to his mother's enthusiasm for the blonde. Ah, it's fine. He assured Sasuke's mother as he put Sasuke down. The young Uchiha was strong enough to stand on his own now. Let's have dinner with us tonight, Naruto-kun. We're having sukiyaki tonight. As usual, before the Uzumaki could say anything, his mother dragged the poor shinobi to their house, or specifically to their kitchen to cook. If there was one thing Sasuke won't envy Naruto for, it would be cooking time with his mother. He loved his mother, but he was not going to get dragged to cooking lesson ever. That night, after dinner with the Uchiha. It was pretty late, but he had to send messages to the tower that he was with Uchiha family, and if Itachi and Shisui had a problem with it, they had to face their family themselves. Tazogare, Itachi's, and Shisui's crow summon looked unhappy with the order, but he didn't protest. I am so sorry for Itachi, but well. It was a very strange situation to apologize to Itachi's parent, in regards to Itachi himself. He already had a feeling the almost forceful dinner invitation had hidden intention behind it, namely Aunt Mikoto wanted to know why his son didn't come home for 2 days already. Mikoto looked sad and worried. You shouldn't apologize on behalf of my son, Naruto-kun. It's just, for a while. More like years, but no one wanted to pry. We noticed whenever something happens on our missions that Itachi would clamp up and look for all sort of excuse to stay away from home. Shisui-kun isn't any better, so. Mikoto and her husband had the decency to look sheepish, though as they were Uchiha their sheepish look only changed slightly than their permanent solemn look. Ma. Sasuke-kun said as much. Like son like parents? Itachi won't explain a thing. Shisui will try to distract you with his chatter and then disappear before you can get anything out of him. Which was why it left him they had never tried to ask before. I am so sorry, Naruto-kun, it's pretty embarrassing, really. I am his mother and yet I am so bad at dealing with him. Naruto shook his head. If I may be so bold. I have to say it's Itachi's fault for keeping things to himself all the time. I am also the same. He admitted with a blush. So more often than not people around us unknowingly makes us upset, and it's hard to admit that, so we deal with it on our own discretion. His voice getting tinier in the end, eyes shifted to the side, as it was hard to look at Mikoto and Fugaku in the eye. Mikoto sighed, cupping her cheek. Really, you kids, and I thought Itachi is getting better at trusting us, but I suppose it's not that easy to recover our broken trust. Still, he should tell us, if not we wouldn't know what to fix, don't you think so too? Naruto-kun. We're not mind readers. Mother was scary, Naruto thought as he resolutely trying and failing to not avert his eyes. That's true. He stuttered, but telling things is hard. I know it's wrong, but dash. So you too. Naruto-kun. He tensed at that. To Hokage-sama, I guessed. AAA. He nodded hesitantly. We don't know where to start, and I guess we also don't want to change our image you have. It's just scary to face rejection from people who acknowledge your image as the perfect prodigy. Fugaku frowned. Well, I suppose it's my fault to think my son has no vulnerable side. If it's any consolation, Fugakuji-san. Itachi doesn't like to show anything less than a perfect son and heir. Is that so? Fugaku chuckled, but there was no mirth in his voice. So why don't you explain to us? Because we know Itachi won't. He contemplated his choice. If he refused it would upset Itachi's parents, but they would understand. But on the other hand, Itachi needed all help he could get to break down the wall between him and his parents. Besides, it wasn't like Itachi ever asked or implied he wanted to keep his reasons secret. All right. He decided. But first I want Fugakuji-san and Mikoto-basan to not get angry at Itachi, and even after I tell you, please talk to him, be honest and forget about clan, just be his parents. Then he added. Please. It was very rude of him to lecture them, but he knew Itachi needed them to be open and see Itachi as a son rather than their heir. I understand. Fugaku answered for both of them. I will give you my words. Naruto nodded, relieved they didn't seem to be upset because of his forwardness. Thank you. Fugakuji-san. He took a deep breath. I need you to promise that, because if not, there is no point telling you. It's something I'm aware of just recently too. His distant behavior towards you appears at first have nothing to do with putting clan before village first. Fugaku and Mikoto looked surprised. Naruto just smiled sadly. Itachi is an awkward child, at least that's the impression I get from what Shisui told me. He is still like that, he is getting better though. Do you know, when he was 5, he said he was wondering about the meaning of life and death. What's the point of living if human will die anyway? Mikoto cupped her cheek. Should I be worried my son thinking about such a thing when he was 5 years old? Yeah, I mean. Naruto caught himself before he could spill about Itachi attempting suicide to test his survival instinct. It's just dash. The Uchiha matriarch narrowed her eyes. You're hiding something, Naruto-kun. Ma, it's not something you should be worried about now, Mikoto-basan. Itachi already talked to me about it anyway. She sighed. It's one of those promises between boys, isn't it? Not quite, but Naruto wouldn't want to be the one to inform Mikoto that his mature child jumped off of a cliff to test a theory. Though maybe one of these days he had to get Hakure to ask some favor from Yamanaka Inoichi-san to get Itachi a therapy session just in case. Ah, kinda. He lied through his teeth. So Itachi is used to think about this kind of things, so immersed in thinking he forget about understanding. He is pretty slow about understanding his own feeling. Mikoto smiled at that. Strange, now you said it, it's not hard to see how my son can be slow when it comes to his feeling. That's also why he confused me so much when he just met. He kept coming to visit me bringing sweets and talking about daily life. It's not until weeks later I realized he is actually attempting to befriend me. I am not any better than he is at social cues doesn't help either. Fugaku and Mikoto sweat dropped. I never imagine Kushina's and Minato's son will be as awkward as my son. In short, Itachi didn't get that something can be as simple as saying it out loud, and save us both from the pain of awkward 2 weeks of eating sweets as talking about how our days went. Like 2 old men in retirement. Our son can't be that bad, could he? According to Shisui, he was even worse when he was in his genin team. He thought they're his co-workers rather than comrades, even though he already went out his way to help his teammates for a personal reason. Yes, he is that bad. And spending a better part of his first year as genin thinking about what's being comrades is about. Naruto finished. Itachi sometimes overthinks things like comradeship most people take for granted and keep them to himself. That's why, when his teammate was killed, the simple fact is that he didn't have to understand or think because what mattered was his teammate died trying to protect him. That's when he awakened his Sharingan, Jujutsu he desired so much in exchange for his teammate's death. And yet, you. Fugaku was shocked at the anger aimed towards him. You overlooked that, to get those eyes he lost something dear, and because of your expectations, he can't even show his discontent. All you see is a perfect heir that accomplished something great, but to Itachi, he is a failure who his teammate died for. Naruto inhaled sharply. You didn't mean it to hurt Itachi, I know, but it didn't make it better for Itachi. That's why he didn't want to be home, and Shisui didn't stop him. Mikoto looked at his husband, whose face colored with guilt. Good, at least Fugaku know he is at fault. Then she turned to Naruto. I see, but why now dash? Naruto looked stricken before he regained his composure. You have heard about the masked man, but we omitted about the part he told us about the next level of Sharingan. Mikoto's and Fugaku gasped. Nani? He was the one who killed Tenma, Itachi's first teammate. In a sense, he gave Itachi his Sharingan, and recently he tried the same thing. Mikoto covered her mouth, eyes wide in horror. That man, how dare he dash? Naruto smiled sadly. Don't worry, I survived. But for a while, Itachi and Shisui were fooled, so they thought I was. Mikoto paled, imagining how crushed her son and nephew when they thought Naruto was dead. Is it any wonder Itachi doesn't want to be home now? Because the close call that was too close to what happened 5 years ago to Itachi's teammate and her son didn't want to be reminded. Naruto was more than just a comrade to Itachi, they were brothers in all but blood. And if what happened with Tenma repeated again? The ceiling tower. Shikamaru wondered what possessed him to sign up for this. Sure, the lessons were fun and stimulating his brain more than what he got at the academy, but coming to Ceiling Tower on weekends was troublesome. The classroom was different from the academy. It was barely half the size of the academy classroom with a low table, so they sat on the floor instead of a chair. A simple and quaint Japanese-style room with tatami mat and shoji door. Although As a member of Nara clan with a taste for board games, he could recognize the wood of the table they used as kaya. It was a very expensive wood for Gobon, board for Go game, and the wood was old if the rich dark color was any indication. In short, sealing division was filthy rich. The tatami of this classroom was also of high quality. According to his father, sealing division's wealth was old money. Like most old clan like Hyuga, their clients were mostly nobles who invested in their security. Well, if his mother's indignant expression when they received the bill on renewing the seal of their clan's compound was any indication, a seal was damn expensive. Though according to his father the cost was actually quite cheap and sealing division was giving them the best deal they could get. At first, Shikamaru didn't understand how work made of paper and ink could be so crazily expensive, but now he got why. Becoming a seal master was hard work and some more. Seal masters were scarce, so everything was limited including mass-produced seals. And last but not the least, this career also needs a lot of money invested in research and experiment. It was no wonder when the opportunity arose Konoha wanted to milk it for her future generation. Opening this class so they could get fresh blood in this field, and Shikamaru could tell this was also some sort of troublesome political campaign. His father didn't say it out loud but Shikamaru could catch the hint. Troublesome. Shikamaru groaned, while it's allowed for you to come in this class just to observe. They were selected to join the class permanently though. Your motivation to come is a bit. Ino pouted, I want to see Sasuke-kun coolly holding calligraphy brush again, and I heard that cool seal master is teaching you today. Where did you get that information anyway? Shikamaru wondered. And I thought you only like Sasuke. Ino giggled, so? I am not dating anyone yet so it's fine for me to look around. Troublesome girl. Sakura who was sitting beside Ino sighed, all sensei in this class are strict Ino-chan, stricter than Iruka-sensei. You can't ogle at Sasuke-kun even if you want to or at Waka-sensei. Ino blinked olishly, Waka-sensei? His name is Waka. Sakura shrugged, I don't think so, but all seal master I've seen around including Yuzuriha-sensei calls him young master, Waka-sama, and he is the youngest sensei we have here. Ino hummed, and that's why you call him Waka-sensei. They had Yuzuriha-sensei and Hyoshao-sensei most of the time, and on occasion kind and friendly Mikumo-sensei helping them with their basic, but the young blonde was the rarest. They started this class for a month and a half and they only had him once before, and even then he was just observing the class and giving input here and there. So he still didn't introduce himself at all? How mysterious of him. Ino gushed, but why so secretive with his name? He is not undercover, is he? Suddenly a familiar voice interjected. His name is Uzumaki Naruto, he is a 4-dan seal master, in our regular force he is ranked Chunin. Ino squeaked, Sasuke-kun. You know him. Sasuke was starting to regret speaking up but when he asked Shisui-san, his cousin assured him this talking and getting familiar with people outside of his clan was helping them. Of course, he is in the same team as my brother and cousin. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow, Uzumaki Naruto. Sasuke shrugged, that's his name, according to my cousin he didn't tell us his name just to get our attention back then well, you're wide awake in his presentation. The Nara's left eye twitched, oh. Shino who was mostly forgotten and sitting a row behind him spoke suddenly. Being an unknown sometimes draw attention better, why? Because it's in human nature to be drawn to mystery. Ino rolled his eyes, well. Kiba of all people was also enthusiastic in listening in a sense, then again even Shikamaru was wide awake. Oi! Shikamaru protested weakly, before turning his attention to Sasuke. Your brother's team? So he is around your brother's age. He does look older than their year at least. Sasuke paused, wondering if it was alright to tell the Nara the truth. It was not like Naruto was hiding his age, it was simply because the Uzumaki was taller than average, mature and already a Chunin people assumed he was at least in his early teen. Well. Look what we have here. Sasuke almost jumped at the familiar voice. Hello there, I am so happy to see Sasuke-kun had lots of friends. Eh. Certain Uchiha beamed to them with a sunny grin. Sasuke stuttered, wondering since when his cousin was behind him. Shisui-san. What are you doing here? The curly-haired Uchiha raised an eyebrow, as if the younger Uchiha had asked a dumb question. Funny you ask that. I have been hanging around the tower longer than you, squirt. I dropped by this class to see how you're doing. Sasuke frowned, are you allowed to come in as you please? They had been briefed on their first day that no one but certified seal masters were allowed to wander around the tower without supervision. Without Naruto-sensei I mean. Of course, this is like my second or third home. Shisui beamed. No, it isn't. Someone denied, but you never listen, and one of these days you might get yourself killed if you walk into one of our dangerous experiments, Shisui. Sasuke's eyes widened in surprise when he saw Naruto by the door with his brother beside him. Nisan, Naruto-sensei. Itachi sighed, we takes our eyes off of you for 1 second and you wander all the way to Sasuke's class, can't you be more patient? Naruto didn't take that long to prepare his class, you know. One of these days we really have to put a leash on you. The blonde added before clearing his throat. Class is about to start, we're going to change rooms, so follow me, make sure to bring your belonging with you. The students quickly scrambled to gather their belongings as ordered before following Naruto and his team outside. Some of them were excited since this was the first time they got to see another part of Sealing Tower. Sealing Division was very strict with their security, so the students weren't allowed to go anywhere without supervision. Make sure no one is left behind. Naruto-sensei's voice was clear but not overly loud. Shikamaru noted it must be some sort of chakra enhancement. We're going to take a long way up with the stairs. If any of you gets tired, tell me or any of my teammates. Is that clear? Hi. They chorused. It was an exhausting walk through spiral staircase made of stones with spiral carving, around a circular pillar Shikamaru suspected was a lift considering the mechanical noise. Why they didn't take the convenient lift? Either Uzumaki Naruto was a jerk who likes to torture his students, or there was some sort of hidden purpose in tiring them out. Sensei. Someone above his year whined at last, can't we just take the lift? That's our cargo lift. He answered smoothly, and students like you don't have clearance to access the room that connected to the lift. But dash. No more complaints, if you're tired you will be excused from this class. That shut the boy up. Shikamaru now was seriously considering Uzumaki Naruto was just being a harsh teacher, and there was no hidden intention in this long walk. Heh. Sasuke, who was walking beside him, which was odd because he was on the back of the group, was conversing with his brother. Oh, that's why he is all the way back here. Sasuke's brother was on the back of the group, most likely to make sure no students would wander or left behind. Uchiha Itachi, who looked like an older version of Sasuke but prettier according to Ino, smiled at his brother. Shikamaru recalled Sasuke's brother was 4 years older than them and graduated early from the academy. He was a chunin and his black eyes wandered to the gray vest the Uchiha wore. So most likely. Regulate your breathing, brats. You will hurt yourself if you don't. Uchiha Shisui, who was in the middle of the group, instructed them. Like this. 1 2 1 2 1 2. Shisui, you don't have to be that loud. Tone it down. Uzumaki Naruto, who was on the front, warned his teammate. Troublesome, these guys couldn't be older than 15 and all of them were in already. A 3-man cell team made of prodigies? That was unusual. Konoha, in spite of what most wanted to believe, didn't grow prodigies on trees. Sunin was a rare case, and Sandaime picked his students himself. So for these 3 to be teamed up, it must be under unusual circumstances. Nisan. Naruto-sensei is tiring us out, what's the point? Sasuke asked his brother. Uchiha Itachi smiled at his brother, he is not trying to tire you guys out. The level we're going to visit is somewhere you have to be familiar with once you get your certification. And also the tower is a very old building, with a different architecture than the rest of Konoha, so it's easy to get lost. This spiral stair, for example, is meant to mess with your spatial perception. So it was about getting used to the unusual layout of this place? That's interesting and troublesome. Thought Shikamaru. Sealing Tower, 8th level. The circular room was bare and, like most of the Sealing Tower, was made of polished white stone of unknown origin. It was also so large with a ceiling so high, Shikamaru felt uneasy here. Most Konoha's building had low ceiling, even an important room like Hokage's office, so to them this place felt so alien. Ah, of all time I decide to come along with you. Ino panted heavily. It's on the day we walk up countless of stairs, I lost count how many. From how wary she was looking at her surrounding, Shikamaru concluded the intimidating room got to her nerve too. It was not just them but other kids too, there was a strange air on this room that made them uneasy. This room is so big. Someone shouted. Shikamaru's eyes widened, this room, considering it's made of stone and so spacious, why there is no echo at all. Sasuke frowned, it's so empty. And he didn't mean the lack of furniture, it was a lifeless place or it had that kind of impression to him. Aburameshino could feel his Kakaichiryu buzzing in restlessness underneath his skin. Uzumaki Naruto cleared his throat. Welcome students, to Eugen no Ma. If any of you notice this room feels unusual to you, that means you have a talent to be a censor nin. That incited excited murmurs among the students. As for why we're here today. He frowned at their empty hands. Why your hands are empty? Notes out. But sensei. There are no tables here. Someone protested, hand raised. Table is a luxury as much as a flat surface is for seal master in a mission. Where did they get the idea shinobi worked indoor all the time? Get used to that, we don't care how you produce legible notes, it's part of our training. As seal master in studies, they weren't allowed to use notebooks with lines, because they had to practice writing without it. Or even using new paper because in their line of work paper was a precious resource, so their notes were made of used paper. After some groaning and muffled protest, the students made themselves comfortable with using the slightly bumpy floor or any hard surface they could use. Well then, today I am teaching you seal master protocols, and by the end of the day, we will give you more assignment you will do routinely, to develop a good habit as seal master. First I am going to teach you the drill when you start experimenting in designing seals. So to any of you who feel the difference between this room and outside, it's because this is a chakra sterile room, so ambient natural energy is very low here even when the barrier that will completely purify this room is not activated yet. So now dash. Sensei. What's nature energy? Someone from the crowd asked, interrupting their instructor. Shikamaru noted that a number of students including Sasuke and Sakura were staring wide-eyed at the idiot who dared to interrupt a seal master. When they were recruited on their first day, they had been given a set of rules which included no wandering around the tower without supervision. However, the first rule was never ever interrupting a lecture before they were given permission to speak up, and idiots who tried had been harshly reprimanded. Shikamaru had not figured why they had a big problem with students speaking out of turn, especially since his father said sealing division was a huge believer on, screw the rules, the heart is right, or whatever that meant. He guessed it had something to do with the high risk of their art, so discipline and obedience to their teacher were practiced religiously so no one got killed because they were not listening to lectures on foundation year. Don't speak out of turn, explanation on natural energy will be after this. But I want to know, aren't we supposed to be curious and all? The boy insisted petulantly. The idiot most likely though, because their teacher was most likely just a few years older than they were, thought he could get away with it. So is being patient and respectful. Uzumaki returned smoothly. Talk back to your instructor once again, and you're expelled. Understood. He pressed on with a smile on his face, but the students could feel the pressure, and even though only one of them was a question, all of them nodded in unison to his query. Well then, for today, we're going through drills of safety procedure when practicing Fuinjutsu. Obviously no one in the room except perhaps Sakura looked enthusiastic to learn something that sounded so boring. Most of the recruited students were nerds or in better sounding academically inclined students, so giving them books and theory to bury their nose in but going through a safety drill would still be boring for 8 to 10 years old kids, especially after a long climb of thousands of stairs. Of course clan-affiliated children wisely shut their mouth when those cerulean eyes swept over the group that consist around 20 or so students. Well then, now we're all in the same page. I want all of you to scoot over a little to the left. After the student gave him a wide berth, Naruto pulled out a ninja wire with a kunai attached in one end and a brush in another end. Then with practiced ease, he used the tool to draw a large circle with diameter around 5 feet. It was a simple seal even though it had 8 layers, as the objective was just isolating ambient chakra out. Fast. Shino murmured from beside Shikamaru. He is faster than Mikumo-sensei. or any sensei in sealing art they had so far. Shikamaru inclined his head at Sasuke. Uzumaki-sensei, he is a combat seal master, isn't he? He had noted from the way seal masters wrote their seal they could tell combat and support apart. Mikumo was support, so his writing was precise and not hurried. Combat seal master like Shiamatsu siblings was more hazard in their movement, like a fast forward movement. Uzumaki was even faster than Shiamatsu sibling, but somehow his movement was also more fluid. Sasuke nodded, a generalist to be exact. Seal master that excelled in both combat and support. Shikamaru scoffed, go figures. He whispered back, no wonder we haven't seen him in class, and most likely not again for the rest of our foundation year. Someone of that caliber won't be wasted on teaching brats. The Uchiha shrugged, SAA. Unknown for the Nara and Uchiha, the Uzumaki seal master who just finished writing his seal was torn between reprimanding them or leaving the 2B because it was him who made Itachi's little brother start being sociable. Itachi gave him an amused smile before using umbu hand signs to him. Only you can hear them all the way from here. Itachi himself only could tell his brother was conversing with the Nara boy because of Sasuke's body language. So let Sasuke and that Nara boy be for once, please. Naruto sighed, clapping his hands once to get their attention once again. The seal I just draw is called Seal of Purification Jorei no Fuin. The purpose of this seal is isolating ambient nature chakra from inside the seal. I am sure you have learned about chakra inside your body that consists of spiritual and physical energy, but there is also chakra in environment, hence, natural energy. Then he activated the seal and the script glowed before the center moved to the outer layer, leaving an empty center layer and a dome-like barrier in pale green color to form. Naruto gestured to their surroundings and clasped his hands once again because their eyes started to wander. Kids, short attention span was a norm for them. Now, the reason why we have to isolate this energy when experimenting is that it's an unexpected variable for seal design in an experimental state. It's not yours, and if it's somehow affected your seal work, the result won't be pretty. Their fearful gaze was silently asking what he meant by not pretty. If you're lucky, the seal will just go bust. Cracking a little, then emitted some chakra smoke. If you're not, we will scrape you off of the floor. Naruto told them bluntly. The Jinchuriki rolled his eyes at the horrified look he got in response, which is why, once you're allowed to draw seal with chakra ink if any of you forgot to put up this barrier first when experimenting. He trailed off, cerulean eyes narrowed dangerously. You're lucky if we catch you before a drop of ink even touch your paper, and we will have you expelled from this program. Because, we would like to avoid scraping your remains from our interior after all. Harsh perhaps, but they didn't need accidents that would make them responsible for dead academy students. This was why Sealing Division was so reluctant to take students from the academy. They were allowed to make as many mistakes as they needed to reach mastery in sealing art, but not slacking on standard safety procedure. That was one dumb way to go, and Naruto wanted all of these kids to get to first dan at least before they suffered their first Fuinjutsu-related accident or expelled from this program. Considering this was their first batch, he had set a very optimistic goal. Well, his subordinates all expected one or two brats to get maimed a bit before their first year. No, they weren't pessimistic, that was a realistic expectation when Fuinjutsu was concerned. He just hoped when that happened Akari, their medic nin, could fix whatever these kids got. The pink-haired medic was no Senjutsu Nade. Now all of you will split into groups of 4, exercise time, first to activate Jorei no Fuin. I will give each of you a sheet with seal ready, so if you have formed your group please send a representative to get the seal from me. As the representative made a line to receive the seal, he quickly added. If you have difficulties please contact my clones, they will check on you and will make sure no one gets into an accident today. The seal was one of the most stable examples in history, but you never know. He noted with satisfaction Sasuke had quickly formed a group with his classmates, plus that Tenten girl but minus Ino who was just observing. The exercise, fortunately, went without a hitch, but some couldn't activate the seal because they didn't have enough chakra or just incapable to push enough chakra out of their body yet to activate the seal. Most of us in the tower has a larger than average capacity, so perhaps that's why do we have to add exercise to increase their reserve too? Naruto sighed, oh well, next exercise. As for why I have my teammates here. Other than to be his bodyguard, because they were still not over that incident. It's to teach you the procedure of how to cooperate with other shinobi when you're working on seals in the field. He continued as he gestured towards Itachi and Shisui. Perhaps it's too early, but I would like you to have some idea about scenarios in field, especially since most of you are interested to be a combat seal master. Or so the questionnaire said. After the first month of study, it was a nightmare. Most of them were thinking of combat instead of support as their first choice. It was not a bad thing, and Konoha needed combat seal master in the field. However, it didn't sit well with him. These kids were so enamored with the idea of jumping to a harder role so early in their study. Then again, kids, and their illusion of adventurous life of shinobi. Damn Takusa and Yuzuriha for advertising Fuinjutsu with his father's name. Not a bad approach, but getting delusional about the career of seal master was going to bite them someday. Uchiha Itachi, pleased to meet you. He introduced himself formally. Hi. I am Uchiha Shisui, nice to meet you kids. Shisui waved at them cheerfully. At Shisui's sun-like cheerfulness, Shikamaru couldn't stop himself from asking, he is an Uchiha, right? The Nara was not the only one who did double take at Shisui. Sasuke inwardly wondered if the correct phrasing Shikamaru was looking was whether or not Shisui was adopted. Yes, he is, and he is my cousin. Even though he acts like that, he can be serious sometimes. Though most of the time Shisui acted like an imbecile, and if not for his talent the clan would wonder if he was really Uchiha Kagami's son. As seal master of your team, you have to develop a habit to keep your teammate in track of what you're working on. And vice versa, you have to fit in your skill set with your team. Looking at the puzzled look he got, Naruto knew there was a big misunderstanding of combat seal master role in the field. For example, Itachi looked at his best friend sympathetically, wondering if the blonde even realized he could just leave it to his subordinates to deal with the demonstration. Regardless that Naruto was the most experienced seal master who worked with a permanent team. As you can see here, I am labeling all my seal tags with coloring the edge. He passed them to Itachi and Shisui. The Uchiha then recited. Red for offensive seals, blue for barriers, purple for trap, and so on, and of course, as teammates, we will be very familiar with your seals. Shisui nodded. You kids have to be this organized at least. It's a very common scenario for seal master to cater for multiple teams in battle, so we can't always have a seal master nearby to explain how to use the seal, so you guys also have to learn how to teach your teammates how to use them. Sometimes I even have to rummage my teammates' belonging for seal tag, and blowing myself up is the last thing I want. Itachi continued. As said by Shisui, you most likely will cater seal supplies for more than just your teammates. Not all seal can be recognized by amateurs at sight, and especially not in the heat of battle, so this is for your own safety and your comrades', not to mention seals used in the field are designed in tag formula. The Uchiha heir pulled out a tag and another, both were unmarked and using the same pattern in the arrangement. These seals are different. Since I am quite familiar with my teammates' work, I can tell them apart just fine, but in the hand of other comrades of ours this can be a problem. A big problem. Shisui added, grinning. Especially since most shinobi is under impression seal is activated by pasting it on nearest surface and just put some chakra in it. So when your seal is activated in a complicated manner, enlighten us regular shinobi, and don't let us just slap, put some chakra and wait for something to happen. It was hilarious when their vice captain said the same thing word to word when Naruto handed him anchor formula for Heiti Irei no Fuin. So starting from today, all notes and calligraphy work in class should be kept in an orderly manner. The method is up to you. The students started to converse among themselves, though most didn't seem to mind to be more organized. Some even boasted they kept their works in an orderly manner already. Then there's also the matter of team dynamic. By now you must be already aware of team arrangement you will get by the time of graduation would be geared to a certain purpose. Now, can anyone volunteer to give examples for us? Hi. Sakura raised her hand quickly, and at the nod she received she quickly listed on. Tracking team, heavy combat, ambush, and capture, infiltration. Naruto nodded. The girl had a good head on her shoulder. That's right. And so for combat seal master to support the team they had to fit in. For example, our team is set for ambush and capture. They had skill in other area, but they were very good at capturing their opponent alive. So the seals I designed for our team are geared mainly for traps like this seal. He held up a sample of Gomen Jimen no Fuin. And a number of seals that distract opponents to give an opening to my teammates, who are both genjutsu and ninjutsu specialist. Then he went on explaining they were also expected to clean up the aftermath of a battle, and giving more example of how they should assist their teammates. Sasuke raised his hand, almost timidly. Didn't Combat Seal Master also fight by themselves? Yuzuriha-sensei uses her seals to fight. Naruto could almost see most of them had the same thing in mind, they didn't expect their role to also include support like medic nin. Yes, we do, but like all specialists like medic nin, trackers, we have a role to fulfill that will exempt us from battle. For example, Aburame Shino. The bug user inclined his head. When you're using your Kikaicho to track down a target, an enemy appeared to stop your team, you're short on time and your target is quickly approaching Hinokuni's border. So who would be left behind to fight? Shino adjusted his glasses. Of course, it would be one of my comrades, preferably the best fighter. Why? So I can track our target and complete the mission's objective. The blonde nodded in approval. Well said, it's not that you're not allowed to fight or you're degraded to stay back while your comrades fight your battle. You have your own fight, however unlike medic nin, you're also allowed to fight in front line depending on the mission objective, and the seal you develop for a battle purpose. Naruto raised his hand that was holding a familiar tri-pronged kunai. This is Hiraishin no Fuin. Yondaime's prized battle seal that allowed him to turn the tide of Third Shinobi War. The prime example of seal developed for battle. Whoa, that kunai looks so cool. Naruto was starting to regret taking over the class if he had not after the endless complaints while walking up the stairs. In this case, Yondaime-sama is augmenting a weapon as a medium. Hiraishin no Jutsu is both offensive and defensive technique that use Fuin Jutsu as its base. Another hand was raised, this time a girl with her hair up in twin buns. Sensei? Can you use Hiraishin no Jutsu? He perked up at the question the girl threw at him. Good question, the answer is no. I can't. The answer lies on why technique based on Fuin Jutsu is so versatile. They're personal or limited on selected few people like Kuchi Yasei no Jutsu. Hiraishin no Jutsu of course, is keyed in for Yondaime's personal use, unless he passed the key no one can use it. In fact Hiraishin no Jutsu actually is not originally Yondaime Hokage's technique. That incited some fuss among the students. The idea of Hiraishin at least, originally belonged to Nadaime Hokage, Senjuto Birama-sama. He waved his hand again and this time a white board appeared, followed with a marker with a brush tip. He quickly drew a Jutsushiki for Hiraishin on Yondaime's version large enough for everyone to see followed by Nadaime's. Yondaime's was a set of kanji drawn beautifully on vertical while the Nadaime's was circular formula using Sanskrit script. They look nothing alike, as you can see. In fact, the theory behind these two seals could be completely different but their function is the same, teleporting its user to wherever the anchor seal is. He cleared his throat, which is why whatever seal you have in mind to assist you in battle, it's yours alone. Naruto paused, finding one hand raised which belonged to Nara Shikamaru. How about yours, sensei? What's with Nara and their curiosity of him? He had met two Nara so far and both were looking at him as if he was a puzzle they couldn't leave alone. He sighed, before bent down to pull his knee-length Jikatabi down and his prized seal appeared as he activated it. It was an odd-looking seal with two centers and resembling vine that went from middle of Uzumaki's thigh to his calf. This is Hikau no Fuin, and the rest is self-explanatory. He could fly. Their wide-eyed look said. As if to answer their silent question Naruto jumped slightly, tucking his legs and floated a few feet above the ground. Then continued his lecture with his feet not touching the ground. So now the next exercise is presentation. One by one each of you will come forward and follow Itachi to next door. We will show you a video of an experiment on seals. Inside these he held up two small scrolls, no larger than children's hand in high. After that, you are expected to explain the function, and instructing how to use the seal in front of your class. Unless of course, you want to try bumbling through your explanation when it's raining kunai out there without preparation whatsoever. Naruto didn't even look up from his absence list. First, Aburame Shino, you're up. The joy of being Aburame, always guaranteed to be the first called. The rest of the class was very interesting. Aburame was so mechanical at explaining the whole class got distracted and forgot whatever he was talking about or if he had finished or not. Sakura gave a good but complicated instruction, which clashed with her stuttering because of stage fright. Surprisingly, Shikamaru was good at it even though he ended his explanation with troublesome and his voice was tiny and droning. Itachi chuckled, a good thing they start learning now. They could get their teammates accidentally blowing themselves up with their seal if this was how bad their presentation skill was. Especially. So this seal is to stop the fire with dash. Sasuke paused, trying really hard to recall what he wanted to say. You also have to keep your hand apart so the fire the seal inhale won't harm you, and you also have to keep the flow of fire-natured chakra steady if not. Air. Sasuke was so completely out of his element and looked ready to dig a hole as he went in circles when explaining the seal. Hi, Uchiha Sasuke, your 3 minutes is up. If you take that long to explain a seal as simple Fukuhauerin in the middle of battle someone will die first before you're done, cousin. Shisui said as he stopped his stopwatch. And if I am your enemy I would have burned your butt first before you can seal my fire. Itachi's little brother blushed as red as his favorite fruit. Shisui-san. The good news was he got to spot a number of problems earlier before it became worse in their effort to nurture a large batch of seal masters at the same time. The bad news, he and Hakure really had to redo the curriculum. Damn it, they were already behind schedule. Everyone was trying to distract him from boredom and stress, obviously. Then again perhaps because of Satoru people around him stopped trying to be subtle, sealed or not. Shisui was the biggest offender with dragging him away from his workshop to hang out and train with the silliest reason such as his workplace was too dreary for a living. He didn't live in there, damn it. Just in the same building, but close enough. Itachi looked hesitate with their choice of place today, and Naruto didn't blame him. For whatever reason, Shisui decided Itachi should catch up with his ex-teammate Shinko and introduce them to her. He also smoothly guilt-tripped Itachi to it, with reason that Itachi had one surviving teammate while Shisui had none he could talk about good old days with. Plain depressing in Naruto's opinion, a 13 and 16 years old talking about good old days, which was when they were 7. Though he was not one to talk considering he had a skewed sense of time because of Kage Bunshin, experiencing his day 10 times through memory transfer did that to you. On a brighter note, Itachi and Shisui would get their promotion after the next mission with Ro Team. Yay, and that meant he would get his guards back. He had slight suspicion the promotion was partly because Sandai Mesama was worried about his safety, so that meant goodbye freedom. And hello again monitored daily life. At least it would be a while until they got their other members for Umbu Squad, and in the meantime Itachi and Shisui would hang around Team Ro. He couldn't wait to get out of that team, not that he hated being there, but being around Hatake Kakashi was so awkward. The Umbu captain tried, but after that talk, Hatake seemed a bit, well, there was no point regretting spilled milk. He couldn't imagine if one day Hatake found out his real identity. Speaking of his identity, Shisui seriously dragged him to a tea house with them. Not the teammate's house but shop. Maybe I should, tea. It was not crowded, the type of shop tucked in the corner and recommended by shinobi to their peers as those quiet place with discreet staff. There was no civilian around of course, but his reputation with shinobi population was just slightly better, which was not comforting at all. Shisui grunted, as if I care about being seen with you, a teammate and my closest friend. He glanced at Itachi meaningfully, and the Uchiha's heir just smiled. If it's Shinko-san, you don't have to worry, at least what you have in mind. Shisui paused at that. Oh yeah, Shinko is that kind of girl after all. Huh? Shinko was Shin, Ko? It didn't take long for him to figure out what Shisui and Itachi meant, and he cursed them inwardly for not giving him a prior warning. Inari Shinko was a former member of Itachi's Genin team, who quit shinobi life to be a waitress in her family's tea house. She was slightly plumper in build, with gray hair with different shades than Hatake with eyes in a darker shade. She was also strong for a retired kunoichi, considering how she greeted Itachi was with hitting him square on solar plexus, and Itachi grunted, which mean it was painful, before lecturing the Uchiha for not coming often for her sweets and how hard it was just to swing by to say hi. Then she turned her attention to the rest of the team, thanking Shisui for putting up with difficult kid Itachi was much to Itachi's indignation and high-fived the other Uchiha. Then her dark gray eyes landed on him, and Naruto froze. Her lips trembled, her cheeks flushed pink. Kya. Who is this cutie you bring with you? Kaoruhei. Ah, he is my teammate. Itachi, who was still rubbing the sore spot Shinko had said. Shinko cupped her cheeks and stared at him unblinkingly. My. You're so pretty. Shisui interrupted, he is a boy by the way, like Itachi here he is one of those who is too pretty for his own good. It's so unfair for you girls. Your input is appreciated, but the rest is just plain annoying. Ow, and here I thought you have standard 2 boys and 1 girl. Ma. Her hands twitched, Anu, can I hug you? His mind went blank, eh? Yes? I mean, why? The next thing he knew Shinko had pulled him to a hug, thankfully she had given him a warning so he didn't perceive it as hostile but, this girl was really strong and she was suffocating him with her chest. Ha ha ha, marshmallow heaven. Shisui commented. What heaven? He needed oxygen to breathe, and he was not a pervert. Hiwa, your hair is so soft, what shampoo did you use? Shinko, I think you should let go of him. He needs to breathe. Itachi, you should have said so faster. Naruto took a deep breath of sweet oxygen to his lungs, patting his chest after Shinko at last let go of him reluctantly. He was no stranger to older girls wanting to hug him, he had his fair share of noble women cooing over him. He blinked at the plate of dango on his table. This is. He hadn't ordered anything. It's on the house, thank you, sweets. It took Naruto a moment to compute Shinko's pointed look at Itachi, and what her gratitude was for. Ah, you're welcome, I am also grateful. He returned. Shinko blinked olishly at that before she patted Itachi's shoulder on her way back to the kitchen. Good for you, Itachi. Itachi, unfortunately, didn't understand the exchange. Is that so? Shinko could only laugh at her former teammate. Ha ha ha, as clueless as ever, your genius really can't help you in this sort of stuff. Naruto's lips and Shisui quirked up at that and discreetly exchanged look with Shinko before they burst to laughter. Leaving Itachi out, and the genius for once sulked because his friends made fun of him. Naruto and Shisui spent the whole day pacifying sulking Itachi. I wish, this peaceful day could go on forever. Naruto prayed in his heart. At that moment, he had no idea that wish wouldn't be granted. The crack on the great tree of Konoha was already spreading and his tiny hands were powerless to mend the broken tree. That's it for part 12. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.